Chapter 101. The crowd in the exhibition hall personally witnessed Qin Wentian gifting the painting to Mu Rou, as they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This fellow was truly willing to part with the painting, causing many to feel jealous of Mu Rou. Naturally, such a scene also proved Qin Wentian's words. This divine inscription painting was indeed inscribed by him. If not, why would he gift it to someone else? The Mu residence has given birth to a good lass. An elder smiled and nodded to Mu Rou. Upon seeing this elder, Mu Rou couldn't help but be startled. This elder had an extraordinary status in the royal capital. Not only him, there were many people here today who all had extraordinary statuses. There were even quite a few third-ranked grandmasters among them. Haha, lass from the Mu residence, not bad. Another person laughed. Mu Rou bowed to those who spoke, showing her respect. Momentarily, Mu Rou became the focal point of the crowd. Such a scene caused Mu Rou to feel even more moved in her heart. Lass Mu, sell this painting to me. That ordinary-looking elder spoke again. His voice wasn't loud, but as the sound of his voice faded, there seemed to be a mysterious energy that suppressed all the noises in the great hall. Mu Rou glanced at that elder. She could tell from the attitude of the surrounding weaponsmiths towards this elder that this person was definitely not an ordinary person. She couldn't help but cast a glance at Qin Wentian. Lass, you should understand the logic of treasuring a jade ring a crime. Even as an elder of the Royal Academy, I'm afraid that even you, an elder of the Royal Academy, would covet this painting, let alone others. If this painting were to be placed in your possession, it would only bring you undeserved calamity. That elder continued. Although his words weren't very pleasing to the ears, there was indeed some logic behind it. The countenance of the elder of the Royal Academy changed, becoming somewhat unsightly. Today, he had truly lost all his face. Mu Rou fell silent. This was a birthday gift from Qin Wentian. From the standpoint of a friend, it wasn't good for her to use this gift to exchange for wealth. However, just like what the elder had said, even if she wanted to keep this gift, would she be able to keep it? Not to mention these outsiders, even her clan would probably order her to hand it over. If that was the case, how could she not comply? When Qin Wentian saw Mu Rou looking at him, he gave her a slight nod. Qin Wentian had already experienced the viciousness of the human heart. If this painting had not been exposed, perhaps it would not have been a big deal. However, since it had caused such a huge commotion, it was indeed a disaster and not a blessing for Mu Rou to keep this gift. Mu Rou understood Qin Wentian's gaze. She said, "This gift is of great significance to me. What does Senior intend to use to exchange for it?" The old man stared at Mu Rou. Seeing that Mu Rou had relented, he pondered for a moment before saying, "In exchange for a promise from me, you can ask me to do something for you in the future." If it was someone else who said this, the crowd would probably laugh out loud. However, after the old man finished speaking, the entire place became exceptionally quiet. Especially those who knew the old man's identity, they were even more shocked. Sometimes, a promise was worth more than any amount of wealth. This was especially true for a promise from this old man. At this moment no one dared to fight with the old man. Mu Rou's eyes narrowed. Just as she was hesitating, a voice rang out. Mu Rou agreed to him. The owner of this voice walked to Mu Rou's side. Upon seeing him, Mu Rou's expression turned into one of shock. "Father." "Emitim," Mu Rou's father nodded. "Agreed to him. Okay." Seeing the solemn expression on her father's face, Mu Rou turned to the old man and said, "Senior, I agree." The old man lightly nodded his head before saying to her, "Your clan members should know how to find me." "Okay." Mu Rou stepped forward and handed the painting over to the old man. After receiving the painting, the old man glanced at Qin Wentian as a hint of a smile appeared in his eyes. "The younger generation will surpass us in time. Little fellow, work hard and your future will be boundless. If you have the time, you can come and chat with this old man often." The old man nodded his head at Qin Wentian before he left. However, the words he said before he left caused great waves to surge in the hearts of many. The first half of the sentence indicated that he was optimistic about Qin Wentian's future, while the second half indicated that Qin Wentian could look for him at any time. The crowd was extremely clear on what this meant. One must know that there were some third-ranked weaponsmiths among them, but even if they went to the old man's doorstep and requested to see him, they might not even be able to see him. But before the old man left, he told Qin Wentian that if he had the time, Qin Wentian could look for him and chat with him. Other than shock, many people also felt that it was a pity, that topsy-turvy divine inscription painting. They would never have the chance to see it again in the future, unless Qin Wentian was able to create another painting that was similar to this one. Mu Rou, you have suffered a lot during these few days. Come back to the clan with me. Mu Rou's father spoke to Mu Rou. Glancing at her father, Mu Rou seemed to be somewhat unwilling. Don't worry, we will compensate you for all the resources the clan has deprived you of. Mu Rou's father laughed, causing Mu Rou's expression to stiffen. Was this all because of a promise from the old man? Or more accurately, was it because of Qin Wentian? Okay. Mu Rou glanced at Qin Wentian. I will return first. Qin Wentian nodded his head with a smile. Mu Rou's father also smiled and nodded to Qin Wentian, before bringing Mu Rou away from the place. Since the matter here was concluded, Qin Wentian also prepared to leave. There were many people here who didn't welcome him. However, before he left, Qin Wentian's gaze landed on the elder of the Royal Academy, as he calmly spoke. I have something to say to you. Are all the teachers of the Royal Academy as shameless as you? After saying this, Qin Wentian stepped out, heading towards the exit. This sentence was obviously directed at the humiliating words spoken by the elder earlier. Are all the students of the Emperor Star Academy as shameless as you? This humiliating sentence included the entire Emperor Star Academy. Naturally, Qin Wentian would remember it. But now, his words were like a resounding slap to the elder's face. Not long ago, Qin Wentian had said that the divine inscription painting belonged to him. However, despite the Royal Academy making things difficult for him and humiliating him, Qin Wentian remained calm and indifferent. The truth would give these people the best response. Now that the truth had been revealed, Qin Wentian's words were the most powerful. Not only was it a slap to the elder's face, it also caused those who had humiliated Qin Wentian to lose all face. This time around, they had truly lost all face. As Qin Wentian spoke, he walked out. The crowd automatically opened up a path for him, as several elders clustered around Qin Wentian, chatting with him. Among them, there were many who had encountered bottlenecks in their comprehension of divine inscriptions, and it was extremely difficult for them to break through. Now that there was a young man with extraordinary attainments in divine inscriptions, if they could become friends and exchange their experiences in the future, it would be of great help to them. Not long ago, this lonely young man now had an unknowingly elevated status. Even in the Royal Academy, it was still so. If this was any other place, and considering the talent of this young man, it would be even more admirable. Yi Zhan and Lu Yan stood together, as they personally witnessed Qin Wentian walking past them. However, Qin Wentian had a smile on his face as he chatted with the people around him. He didn't even cast a glance at them. Maybe, they no longer had the qualifications to attract Qin Wentian's attention. The arrogance they had when they first arrived was now completely shattered. Especially Lu Yan at this moment, she lowered her head and didn't say anything. Maybe they were people from different worlds. Yi Zhan's countenance was filled with rage, so much so that his expression was contorted. In truth, Qin Wentian had never interacted with him before, nor had he ever humiliated him. His rage and contortion might have originated from the fact that his pride had been ruthlessly trampled on. Yet he was unwilling to admit this inferiority complex in his heart. What did he, Yi Zhan, count for? In the Yi clan, there were many more outstanding youths that were more outstanding than him. If he left the Yi clan, he might be nothing. But now, looking at Qin Wentian's glory, just based on his own hard work and talent, Yi Zhan was no match for him. This kind of comparison caused Yi Zhan to feel a sense of inferiority in the depths of his heart. Yet he suppressed this feeling of inferiority. In fact, he had never thought that Qin Wentian would never compare himself to him. In Qin Wentian's eyes, he, Yi Zhan, was never an important character. Other than Yi Zhan, Gretchen, who was standing behind Murin, also had a similar feeling. She had once looked down on Qin Wentian. She was once a lofty existence. But now, in front of Qin Wentian, she could only stand behind Murin and watch Qin Wentian blossom with his brilliance. That self-satisfied pride of hers, in front of Qin Wentian, wasn't even worth mentioning. His combat prowess had long been proven. As for his talent in weaponsmithing, that divine inscription painting was more than enough to shatter the pride in her heart. The people from the Sky Transport Network apologized and silently left. Shui Yuan stood there, not daring to speak. The elder from the Royal Academy stared at her, his countenance ashen as he angrily berated. "This is your fault." At this moment, it was as though he wanted to vent all the humiliation he had suffered on this student, using this as a pretext to redeem his own face in front of everyone. Shui Yuan lowered her head in shame, not daring to speak. In fact, although she was in the wrong in this matter, the elder had no qualifications to criticize her. As an elder of the Royal Academy, how could she not agree to the divine inscription painting? As for what happened after that, it was all the elder's own decision. It had nothing to do with her. Muro could criticize her, but this elder had no grounds to do so. However, in this world, there was no such thing as logic. No matter how severe the elder's criticism was, as an ordinary student of the Royal Academy, she could only accept it. Wasn't this a form of sorrow? Chapter 102. Qin Wentian walked towards the exit of the Royal Academy. Behind him, Little Rascal leisurely followed. At the same time, there were several silhouettes in Qin Wentian's surroundings. The person closest to him was none other than the guest elder of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Lu Feng. Since he was from the Divine Weapon Pavilion, he naturally felt closer to him. "Senior Lu Feng, what was the identity of that old man earlier?" Qin Wentian curiously asked. That old man looked extremely ordinary, but he had used a promise to take away the painting that everyone wanted. Not only that, at that time, there wasn't a single person who fought with him over it. Naturally, Qin Wentian discovered this abnormality. "I was just about to tell you about this. You should know about the Junlin banquet, right?" Lu Feng asked Qin Wentian. It's the grandest event of the year in Chu." Qin Wentian nodded. "That's right. In Chu, the Junlin banquet is an extremely important event. During the Junlin banquet, the talent of the youths could be clearly seen with a single glance. And every year, the top rankers of the Junlin banquet would all have a glorious future. The majority of them had all left Chu." Lu Feng slowly continued. "That old man's name is Gong Hong. Nowadays, it's very rare for the youths to hear his name. But 30 years ago, he was a genius of the younger generation. If I didn't remember wrongly, the top ranker of the Junlin banquet was none other than Gong Hong." Qin Wentian's heart trembled slightly. The top ranker of the Junlin banquet? Not only that, it was a character from 30 years ago. Why does he look so old? Qin Wentian asked in bewilderment. For cultivators, if one's essence, qi, spirit, and blood were strong, they would all appear extremely youthful. Gong Hong wasn't even 60 years old, so he should have the appearance of a middle-aged man. Nobody knows about this. Gong Hong is a legendary character. Back then, he obtained the top ranker of the Junlin banquet, and the 9 Mystical Palace wanted to recruit him as a disciple. After speaking till here, Lu Feng glanced to his left and right, before continuing in a low voice. However, Gong Hong was someone who loved freedom and didn't agree. After obtaining the title of champion, he directly left Chu. By right, this matter should have come to an end. For those who left Chu, it was extremely rare for news to be transmitted back. However, just a few years ago, Gong Hong returned to Chu. Not only that, despite not having any experience in forging weapons during his youth, he actually had extraordinary attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. He personally inscribed divine inscriptions a total of 3 times, and all 3 times the divine weapons he forged were all peak-tier, 3rd-ranked divine weapons. This matter caused quite a commotion in the past, and the aura of a legendary legend was also instilled into the minds of many. Currently, not only does he have extraordinary achievements in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, his personal strength is also unfathomably deep. Lu Feng sighed as he spoke. He had a lot of respect for Qin Wentian. Hearing this, Lu Feng gradually understood. A promise from such a character was truly extraordinary. Mu-Ro's father immediately got Mu-Ro to agree. In the future, if the Mu clan encountered any problems they couldn't resolve, Gung Hong's promise was equivalent to a path. Wentian, if there's an opportunity, you should pay a visit to Gung Hong and exchange insights on the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. Lu Feng smiled. He used the word exchange, evidently placing Qin Wentian on an extremely high pedestal. Where does Senior Gung stay? Qin Wentian asked. The Bamboo Lodge. Lu Feng laughed. In the royal capital of Chu, there was only a single place named the Bamboo Lodge, and it was precisely the place where Gung Hong stayed. This wasn't a secret, and those who knew of Gung Hong's identity were all very clear about this. There would often be people who went to the Bamboo Lodge to pay a visit to Gung Hong, but only a very few would be able to meet him. Can you bring me there? Qin Wentian smiled, his words causing Lu Feng's countenance to stiffen. You want to go there just like that? With such an esteemed senior, I would have to pay a visit sooner or later. Why don't I familiarize myself with the place first? Qin Wentian replied with a smile. Lu Feng naturally wouldn't reject such a request. After exiting the Royal Academy, Qin Wentian bid farewell to the surrounding crowd and left together with Lu Feng. The divine inscription painting that Qin Wentian had inscribed had already caused quite a commotion in the royal capital, especially in the world of weaponsmiths. And weaponsmiths had always been the target of the various powers in the royal capital. Hence, countless pairs of eyes were paying close attention to the matters of the Royal Academy. Nobody could have predicted that the ending would be so unexpected. Qin Wentian once again entered the sights of the various major powers. Back then, when the young man stood amidst the snowstorm, with the Emperor Star Academy and the Divine Weapon Pavilion standing behind him, the various major powers were already filled with curiosity towards Qin Wentian. And this time around, Qin Wentian's performance had once again attracted a great deal of attention. Many of the major powers started to seriously investigate Qin Wentian. Although Qin Wentian's background seemed simple, how did he become a genius in the field of divine inscriptions? Were there any secrets on Qin Wentian's body? In the Mu residence, in front of a desk, an old man had a scroll in front of him. There were some words written on it, and the words were, Qin Wentian, adopted son of Qin Chuan. His family background is unknown. When he was young, he was brought to the Qin residence by a crippled butler and grew up there. At the age of 6, it was discovered that there was a problem with his meridians, causing him to be unable to cultivate. At the age of 13, he was betrothed to Autumn Snow of the Bai clan. At the age of 16, the Bai clan annulled the betrothal, and Qin Wentian began to cultivate, releasing his heavenly hammer astral soul from the third heavenly layer. There wasn't much information written on this scroll, but it was enough to encompass Qin Wentian's entire life. It was a very simple life, so simple that there wasn't much information. Only after he entered the royal capital did the information become more plentiful. The old man lifted his brush and added a line of words at the end of the scroll. Genius in divine inscriptions, able to create his own third-level divine inscriptions. His comprehension ability monstrous. After writing this line of words, the old man placed the brush down, only to see a butler standing outside the door. What's the matter? The old man asked in a low voice. Miss Mu-Ro has returned. The butler replied in a low voice. The old man inclined his head and asked in a low voice, was Mu-Ro's birthday yesterday? Yes. The butler nodded his head. Prepare a family banquet. The old man calmly stated. The scale of the banquet can be moderate, and the Mu clan can celebrate together. But it must have the warmth of a family. Yes. The butler nodded his head and bowed as he retreated. In one of the rooms in the O residence, a silhouette stood in front of a study table, looking at the scroll in front of him, as a look of contemplation flashed in his eyes. This was a middle-aged man, and he looked cultured and refined, just like an ordinary scholar. The name on the scroll was also Qin Wentian. Once, he didn't pay much attention to this name, even if he hoped that the owner of this name would die sooner. A youth that originated from the Sky Harmony City, although he had extraordinary talent, he still had reason to believe that with Orkan, Yanaro, and the others in the Emperor Star Academy, it would be easy for them to make this genius disappear. However, the growth of this genius was too fast, so fast that he attracted the attention of the Emperor Star Academy in such a short period of time. And now he was even protected by the will of the Emperor Star Academy. Now it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy to get rid of this youth. How confident are we in killing him? The middle-aged man asked in a low voice. 100%. Behind him, a silhouette calmly replied. It was as though as long as the middle-aged man nodded his head, he would be able to guarantee that Qin Wentian would become a dead man. What's the probability of the Emperor Star Academy finding out about this? The middle-aged man asked again. Directly assassinate him, 90%. That person replied as accurate as before. In that case, reduce this probability to less than 10% before we act. Naturally, if we can borrow the hands of others to do it, that would be for the best. The middle-aged man faintly stated. 90% was simply courting death. He wouldn't do such a risky thing. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wentian's growth was too fast, he wouldn't even think of doing this. The Yi clan should be even more anxious than him. Right. The person behind him replied. If we borrow the hands of others, we absolutely cannot allow the Emperor Star Academy to find out about us. There must not be even the slightest possibility. The middle-aged man seemed to have thought of something as he added. No one was willing to go against the will of the Emperor Star Academy. Even the royal clan had to give the Emperor Star Academy enough face at times. The weight of his own clan naturally wasn't enough. He believed that as long as he gave the command, the person behind him would definitely do it well. After so many years, everything he did was done to perfection. The Junlin banquet was about to arrive. He hoped that Chun'er would be able to obtain a good result this time around. Chapter 103. In the outskirts of the royal capital of Chu, there was a tranquil bamboo forest. This bamboo forest was situated right next to a mountain peak in the dark forest, and was exceptionally tranquil. Qin Wentian and Lu Feng arrived at this place. They stared at the verdant bamboo forest ahead, filled with an exuberant aura of life. We've arrived, but I'm unable to accompany you in. Lu Feng bitterly smiled. No one would dare to barge into this bamboo forest without permission. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly. Carrying little rascal in his arms, he took a step forward as he called out. Junior Qin Wentian pays his respects to Senior Jemyang. Come in. From within the bamboo forest, an ethereal voice drifted out. Qin Wentian only saw that the bamboo forest ahead of him actually began to move. Amidst the swaying green bamboo, there was actually a small pathway. I'll take my leave first. Lu Feng smiled at Qin Wentian. Many thanks. Qin Wentian nodded his head, sending Lu Feng off with his gaze. After which, he himself followed the small pathway, and entered the bamboo forest. This pathway was extremely deep. After walking for some time, Qin Wentian finally saw a simple hut in front of him. It was quiet and peaceful, as though it was isolated from the rest of the world. What a wondrous place! Qin Wentian sighed in his heart. After arriving at the hut, he saw Jemyang Hong sitting there, as though he was drawing something. In front of him, there were several scrolls of paintings. The inscriptions on them were extremely peculiar, as though they were all divine inscriptions. Senior Jemyang. Qin Wentian bowed to show his respect. Little brat, you came so quickly. Come over and take a look at this painting. Jemyang Hong spoke to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he sat down on the stool. After which, Gung Hong retrieved a painting scroll and passed it to him, causing Qin Wentian's countenance to stiffen. The painting scroll that Gung Hong passed to him was actually in the form of a human. Senior, this is? Qin Wentian asked. Naturally, it's a divine inscription painting. How long do you need to comprehend it? Jemyang Hong asked to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows when he heard the other party's words as he stared at the painting. There seemed to be the figure of a beautiful woman in the painting. The figure pointed her finger forward, and there seemed to be an endless aura gushing out. Buzz. Qin Wentian's mind trembled violently. He put down the scroll, his heart pounding. I'm afraid that this painting has already reached the level of a fourth-ranked divine inscription. It's impossible for me to comprehend it within a short period of time. Qin Wentian stared at Gung Hong as he asked. Was this inscribed by Senior? I don't have that level of comprehension. Gong Hong shook his head and didn't say anything else. How did you inscribe your divine inscription paintings? Gung Hong asked Qin Wentian. In a special state of comprehension, I wanted to infuse my own energy into the divine inscription painting, and under a stroke of luck, I was able to inscribe that painting, replied Qin Wentian. Infuse your own energy into the painting? Gung Hong stared at Qin Wentian, as a strange light flickered in his calm eyes. Yes. Sometimes, I wonder if divine inscriptions are a type of innate techniques, and if there are any similarities between the two. Qin Wentian nodded his head. However, his casual words caused Gung Hong's body to tremble violently, as great waves rocked his heart. For a moment he stood there in a daze. Divine inscriptions, innate techniques? Gung Hong's body started to tremble. Comprehending the painting? Innate techniques, innate techniques. Gung Hong seemed to have grasped something, as his eyes stared fixedly at the painting in front of Qin Wentian. If this is an innate technique, what kind of innate technique would it be? Gung Hong murmured in a low voice. His entire person seemed to have changed. He who had been quiet all this while had turned into a daze as he stared at the painting. Fourth-rank divine inscriptions were countless times more complicated compared to third-rank divine inscriptions. Even Qin Wentian had no way to unravel them. In fact, as long as he immersed his consciousness into the divine inscription, he would feel a tyrannical aura gushing towards him, only to see Qin Wentian sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. Circulating the dreamcast art within his body, he stepped into the dreamscape, and instantly, he appeared on the sandy beach once again. In front of Qin Wentian, there was still the human-shaped painting he had seen earlier. In my dreamscape, let's transform. Qin Wentian's intent fluctuated, as the human-shaped divine inscription painting transformed into a humanoid figure that attacked forward. Currently, Qin Wentian had no way to deduce an innate technique from this painting. However, he could use Dreamcast to cause the divine inscription painting to undergo various transformations. After that, he could deduce which of these transformations would be more compatible with the essence of the painting. After testing out hundreds and thousands of transformations, Qin Wentian discovered that if he treated this divine inscription painting as an innate technique, it would contain an endless amount of energy, as though it would never be extinguished. A single attack would have an endless amount of energy. After exiting the dreamscape, Qin Wentian saw that Gung Hong was still in that dazed state. Abruptly, Gung Hong seemed to have awoken as he stared at Qin Wentian. Use the energy you sense from this divine inscription to attack me. Quick. Gung Hong's state caused Qin Wentian to be taken aback. This divine inscription painting must be extremely important to him. As he thought of this, he stood up and stabbed out with his finger. The air trembled as his finger landed on Gung Hong's body. However, Qin Wentian felt as though he had struck an impenetrable wall. There was no way for him to move Gung Hong. Finger technique, stacking layers of attacks? There's no such innate technique, there's no such thing. Gung Hong's eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. Senior, this must be a finger technique. What I've comprehended is only the tip of the iceberg. Maybe it's a spear technique or a sword technique, but within it, there's definitely an endless cycle of growth and multiplication. Qin Wentian spoke. Spear technique? Sword technique? Endless amount of energy? Gung Hong sank into deep contemplation. After a long time, he abruptly stepped to the side as he stabbed out with his sword. In front of him, a howl of rage could be heard, capable of destroying everything. The hurricane formed by the sword tore through the air, transforming into a terrifying whirlwind. Swishing sounds rang out as the green bamboos in front of him were directly torn apart. Is it this kind of sword technique? Gung Hong stared at Qin Wentian. It's highly possible. Qin Wentian felt his heart trembling as he sensed the sword intent. Gung Hong's strength was truly terrifying. 9 swords of breath, this is the 9 swords of breath. Gung Hong was extremely agitated as he glanced at Qin Wentian. After which, Gung Hong dashed into his hut. A moment later, Qin Wentian saw Gung Hong taking out another 3 divine inscriptions paintings as he passed them to Qin Wentian. Quick, help me take a look. Tell me the intent contained within them. Gung Hong himself was an extremely powerful weaponsmith. His attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were naturally extremely high. However, at this moment, he had completely lost his composure. What kind of painting would cause Gung Hong to fall into such a state of frenzy? Okay. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he took the second painting. This painting was still that of a silhouette waving his hand. There was nothing special about it. Yet it seemed as though a terrifying energy was contained within it. Qin Wentian once again entered the dreamscape, trying to find out the various variations of the painting. After which, he tried to converse with Gung Hong. However, Gung Hong was still unable to find a corresponding innate technique. Senior, maybe this innate technique is something you have never cultivated before. Qin Wentian looked at Gung Hong as he spoke. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. If it's really as you said, and there's an innate technique hidden within the divine inscriptions, I would definitely know about it. I've never cultivated the 9 swords of breath before. Gung Hong resolutely replied. He followed Qin Wentian's instructions and continuously unleashed over 100 different innate techniques, destroying a large portion of the bamboo forest in front of him. Senior Gung knows too many innate techniques. Even if he hasn't cultivated them before, he's still able to imitate the intent contained within. How terrifying. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. However, at this moment, he glanced at the painting again as he mumbled in a low voice. Maybe this painting itself is a type of innate technique that contains many variations. What did you say? Gung Hong seemed to have grasped something when he heard Qin Wentian's words. Senior, maybe this innate technique itself contains variations? Qin Wentian spoke again. Gung Hong drew in a deep breath as he took a step forward and stretched out his palms. This time around, he didn't do anything, but the feeling he gave Qin Wentian was that he would be able to unleash all sorts of variations. Yes, Senior, I'm very close. This is the feeling I have. Qin Wentian's eyes brightened. Formless innate technique, Gung Hong murmured. He then turned to Qin Wentian. Let's take a look at the next painting. Qin Wentian nodded his head. The third painting actually had an extremely beautiful posture. It didn't seem like an innate technique at all. The two of them discussed for a long time as the sky gradually darkened. Yet there was still no conclusion. The two of them didn't sleep for the entire night. They were still discussing. Finally, Gung Hong used an extremely compatible movement. Although it didn't have any charm to it, and was even extremely awkward, it still caused Qin Wentian's eyes to brighten. There's a high possibility that this is it. This is the starting stance of a movement technique. It's named the connecting steps, and it contains many variations. Gung Hong murmured as he continued. There's only one more painting left. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he started to comprehend the last painting. This painting had the silhouette of a man, and he was just standing there. Only his eyes were extraordinary. Gung Hong only glanced at it a few times before he sighed. I've only understood the first 3 innate techniques, but I've never cultivated them before. But for the 4th innate technique, I know what it is. It's the eyes of death. As the sound of Gung Hong's voice faded, his eyes deepened, causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble. However, an instant later, Gung Hong's eyes returned to normal. This is one of the innate techniques I'm most proficient in. As for the 9 swords of life, it was her favorite innate technique. As for the formless innate technique and the connecting steps, I've also heard of them before. But why did I only understand today? The 4 paintings contain 4 types of innate techniques. Gung Hong drew in a deep breath as he stared at the skies. 9 swords of life, eyes of death, formless innate technique, connecting steps. Qin Wentian murmured, life, death, no wait, no, it should be life, death, interdependent. Qin Wentian's words entered Gung Hong's ears. Yet they were akin to a bolt of lightning, directly blasting into his mind, causing him to stiffen on the spot, as though he had stopped thinking. At this moment, Qin Wentian felt an oppressive aura. This entire space was so quiet that it was terrifying. Interdependent, haha, interdependent. Gung Hong, you will die a horrible death. Abruptly, Gung Hong howled in rage as he coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. His heart was overwhelmed with anger as he collapsed onto the ground. His eyes were still wide open, and in those deep eyes of his, there was boundless regret and despair. Chapter 104. Senior. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Wentian's heart trembled as he exclaimed in shock. Squatting down, he wanted to check on the condition of Gung Hong's injuries. However, he only saw Gung Hong waving his hands, his eyes still staring at the empty space. His empty eyes were filled with despair, grief, regret, pain, and all sorts of other negative emotions. Anyone who looked at him would be able to feel the deep sorrow in his heart. "Senior, please take care of yourself." Qin Wentian sighed in his heart when he saw the expression in Gung Hong's eyes. He knew that Senior Gung must have had an extraordinary past. Living and dying together, 20+ years, everything was wrong. I wholeheartedly wanted to comprehend the divine inscriptions within the 4 paintings, and because of this, I started to study divine inscriptions. But sadly, I was wrong from the start. Gung Hong's voice was filled with helplessness and sorrow, as though he was mumbling to himself. If I knew that she didn't want me to comprehend the divine inscriptions, and only wanted me to unravel the 4 innate techniques within the 4 paintings, I believe that I would at most need half a year's time to unravel them. After all, I've seen and recognized these 4 innate techniques before. In fact, I might even be able to unravel them within 2 to 3 months. Time was more than enough, but I still spent over 20 years. Gung Hong continued. Qin Wentian knew that Gung Hong was right. If Gung Hong knew that the 4 innate techniques contained within the 4 paintings, based on his experience and comprehension, half a year would be more than enough. After all, he was familiar with the 4 innate techniques, and was even able to unleash them. However, Gung Hong's direction was completely wrong. I've always claimed to be carefree and unrestrained, but in reality, I'm inferior, cowardly, and cold-blooded. I've let you down. A teardrop rolled down from the corner of Gung Hong's eyes. He laid there like a dead man. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. His heart, at this moment, was as cold as ice. At this moment, Qin Wentian saw Gung Hong's disheveled hair slowly turning white, causing his heart to tremble. "Senior, it's already been over 20 years. Why must you do this?" Qin Wentian persuaded. What kind of despair and agony could cause one's hair to turn white in an instant? In an instant, the black hair on Gong Sun Hong's head turned silver. Gong Sun Hong seemed to have aged tens of years in an instant. With his eyes closed, Qin Wentian sat beside him, not knowing what to say. The she he was talking about should be a woman. Otherwise, why would he leave behind the words "will stick together in life and death"? However, what Qin Wentian didn't understand was that since the woman had such deep feelings for him, why didn't she tell Gung Hong to his face, leaving behind decades of regret and misunderstanding? Gung Hong closed his eyes, as though he had lost all signs of life. Qin Wentian sighed but didn't disturb him. He sat down not far away from Gung Hong and didn't leave, as he was worried that something might have happened to Gung Hong. Very swiftly, another night arrived as astral light cascaded down from the heavens, landing on Qin Wentian's body. In his dreams he was currently cultivating. His entire person was bathed in the astral light, tranquil and peaceful. Bits of astral energy unceasingly flowed into his body, circulating through his arterial pathways and acupoints, circulating through the heavenly cycle. At this moment, Gung Hong opened his eyes. He inclined his head and stared at the starlight in the sky, as an intense sense of disappointment could be seen in his eyes. "Everything is your own doing." Gung Hong stared at the empty space as he murmured in his heart. Back then, she was extremely talented and had countless pursuers. Although you appeared to be confident and at ease, didn't you feel inferior in your heart? If you didn't feel inferior, why didn't you feel that way after spending so much time with her? Could it be that you couldn't sense her feelings for you? Back then, she rejected 18 marriage proposals, and those she rejected were all demon-level geniuses from the various great sections. None of them were inferior to you, so why did she reject them? Why did she tell you all these? But you felt inferior, useless, and didn't even dare to open your mouth to express your feelings. Back then, everyone was jealous of you. Why were they jealous? Because she was only close to you. And because of jealousy, she heavily injured you. Because of this, she begged her father for medicine for you. But on the 19th marriage proposal, she maintained her silence. Could it be that you really couldn't see the reason behind it? Even when she came to see you for the last time, You still didn't open your mouth to express anything. You didn't say anything at all. She left behind 4 paintings and gave you a year's time. Even if you didn't comprehend the paintings in this 1 year, as long as you opened your mouth, she would still choose to leave with you regardless of the price. Because of these 4 words, together in life and death. But you still didn't. You personally witnessed her getting married to someone else, and even stared at her with indifference in your eyes, watching everything unfold. Could it be that you couldn't see the despair and coldness in her eyes when she looked at you? Gung Hong, you truly deserve to die. Gung Hong thought back to the events that happened over 20 years ago. In his heart, there was only pain. He stared at the night sky in a daze, lonely and desolate. The morning air was slightly damp. In the bamboo forest ahead, sparkling and translucent dewdrops could be seen. Qin Wentian opened his eyes, only to see Gung Hong sitting there. Gung Hong's silvery hair draped over his shoulders, causing him to appear exceptionally old. Qin Wentian called out, "Senior. You're awake." Gung Hong turned his gaze over, as he smiled at Qin Wentian, as though he had just woken up from the madness he experienced yesterday. This caused Qin Wentian to silently heave a sigh of relief. Qin Wentian nodded his head. How did you manage to link divine imprints and innate techniques together? Gung Hong curiously asked. Back then, she was also a heaven-defying genius, and was proficient in divine imprints. 20 years ago, she was able to inscribe 4 paintings for him. This was the best proof. Not only that, she was the same as Qin Wentian, and had long since discovered the connection between divine imprints and innate techniques. It was also a stroke of inspiration. I cultivated a type of innate technique before, and I needed to borrow the power of divine imprints. After that, I gained some insights into divine imprints, and unknowingly, I managed to link the 2 together. Qin Wentian smiled as he replied. Gung Hong stared at the clean smile on the young man's face, and involuntarily thought back to the time when he was young. Sadly, he had wasted over 20 years of his life, and the only thing left behind was regret. If you meet a girl that can move your heart, don't miss this opportunity. You must take the initiative to speak to her. Gung Hong abruptly spoke to Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to be stunned. Wasn't this sudden change a little too great? Smiling foolishly, Qin Wentian nodded his head. Okay. However, up until now, he had yet to meet a girl that could truly move his heart. If he wanted to talk about his heart being moved, it would be the scene of that day in the snow. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, and the young girl sitting on the ground with him, calling him a Dumbo, before leaving with a smile on her face. That scene was truly beautiful. What am I thinking about? Qin Wentian bitterly smiled as he shook his head. Remember, don't miss this opportunity. If not, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Gung Hong sighed deeply as he continued. You are able to link divine imprints and innate techniques together, but have you ever tried to link your astral souls with your innate techniques? Senior, the attacks of innate techniques all contain a strand of energy from the astral souls within. Different astral souls can imbue different amounts of astral energy into the innate techniques you cultivate. As for a deeper connection, this junior has yet to unravel it. Qin Wentian replied. Although this was what he said, in reality, Qin Wentian already had this feeling. Back then when he fought against Yanaro and Luo Qianqiu, he had already faintly sensed that he wanted to infuse dream force into his attacks. You should know that above Yuanfu is the Heavenly Dipper realm, right? But do you know what the symbol of a Heavenly Dipper realm is? Gung Hong asked Qin Wentian. Junior doesn't know. Qin Wentian replied. Currently, he was only at the arterial circulation realm. How could he possibly come into contact with someone at the Heavenly Dipper realm? Heavenly Dipper realm was already enough to stand at the pinnacle of Chu. When you condense your astral nova is also known as your astral soul. At that time, your astral soul would be the most direct form of combat prowess. A powerful astral nova is even more tyrannical compared to divine weapons. Gung Hong explained to Qin Wentian. Sooner or later, your astral soul will be transformed into an innate technique. However, the amount of resources required to condense an astral nova is simply too great. From the Yuanfu realm to the Heavenly Dipper realm, there's a huge gap. Many people have no way to cross this heavenly boundary in their entire lives. This includes those with outstanding talent. If you can infuse your astral soul into your combat prowess earlier, in the future when you condense your astral nova, you would have a deeper comprehension and would have an easier time compared to others. Gung Hong guided Qin Wentian. As Qin Wentian listened seriously, this was the insights of a senior, an extremely valuable experience. Look into my eyes. Gung Hong spoke to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian stared into Gung Hong's eyes, only to see a pair of eyes of death staring into his eyes. It was as though an intent of death rushed into his mind. Luckily, that intent of death instantly vanished, but in that instant, it still caused Qin Wentian's heart to palpitate wildly. Just a single gaze was already so terrifying. This is the fusion of my astral soul and my innate technique, the eyes of death. This innate technique can only be cultivated by those with a similar level of astral soul. Gung Hong continued. Hence you must always remember to use your astral soul. In the future, it will be your strongest weapon, and also the crux to raising your cultivation base. Many thanks for Senior's guidance. Qin Wentian bowed. Just some words of experience, how can it be considered as guidance? If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid that I would still be unable to decipher these 4 paintings. Gung Hong sighed. Qin Wentian, the direction you've comprehended is correct. Astral souls, divine imprints, innate techniques, all of these are for the sake of cultivation. As the saying goes, all rivers flow into the sea. The great Tao originates from the same source. Work hard in your cultivation, live your life well, and don't have any regrets. You go ahead. These 4 paintings were solved by you, so I'll gift them to you. Gung Hong treated Qin Wentian as a junior. Qin Wentian glanced at the silver-haired Gung Hong as he received the paintings in his hands. Standing up, he bowed once more before retreating. Senior, take care. In the future, this junior will come and visit Senior often. Qin Wentian left behind these words. As he stepped into the bamboo forest, Little Rascal scuttled out from the side, following behind him. Chapter 105. The Emperor Star Academy was even more lively than usual. As the end of the year neared, many of the students who were out tempering themselves returned. Under the sunlight, the laughter of the youths caused the entire academy to be filled with vitality. Within the academy, the most popular topic of discussion was naturally the strength of the students who returned, and whether they would be able to obtain outstanding results in the Junlin banquet. There were also many who would occasionally mention the name of Qin Wentian. This name could be said to be the most frequently mentioned name in the Emperor Star Academy this year, even more so than Luo Qianqiu last year. After all, in this year, this new student had accomplished many great things. Many of the returning students were filled with admiration for Qin Wentian. Naturally, there were also those who had been out tempering themselves for a long period of time, and had heard of Qin Wentian's story the moment they returned to the academy. Although they were extremely prideful, they couldn't help but feel a tinge of defiance in their hearts. They wanted to spar with this new student to see if he was as legendary as the rumors said. Because of this, whenever Qin Wentian walked around the academy grounds, he would always attract the attention of many people. This was especially so after the incident with the Royal Academy. When he returned to the academy, there were even more gazes focused on him, causing Qin Wentian to smile bitterly in his heart. He had truly experienced the treatment of a celebrity. However, the feeling of being stared at everywhere he went wasn't a good one. Returning to his own courtyard, Qin Wentian discovered that other than Qin Yao, senior sister Luo Huan was there as well. Senior sister, why are you here? Qin Wentian smiled as he walked forward. I'm here to chat with Qin Yao. You caused such a huge commotion outside, and are now a celebrity. When are you going to gift me a divine inscription painting? Luo Huan looked at Qin Wentian with a smile that was not a smile. If senior sister likes it, I will personally gift it to you the next time I create a divine inscription painting. Qin Wentian laughed. Don't lie to me. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. Naturally. Not to mention one. Even if senior sister wants 5 or 6 paintings, I will still give them to you. Qin Wentian laughed, causing the smile on Luo Huan's face to grow even more radiant. Looks like I didn't dote on you for nothing. Come over, let senior sister give you a kiss. Qin Wentian stared at Luo Huan's smiling face as his eyes flickered. He bitterly smiled. Senior sister, stop tempting me. Luo Huan's charm was exceedingly great. Qin Wentian had seen many beauties before, but only Mo Qingqing and Luo Huan were able to cause his heart to flutter. However, they were two different kinds of beauty. Mo Qingqing was a peerless beauty of the mortal world. It was extremely hard for him to maintain his calmness upon seeing her. Not only that, his senior apprentice sister Luo Huan was simply too sexy. Seeing Qin Wentian's expression, Luo Huan couldn't help but laugh. Qin Yao also added, Sister Luo Huan, don't tease this little brat anymore. Come to think of it, this little brat is already 17 years old. I wonder if there's any girl he likes. I'm curious as well. Luo Huan stared at Qin Wentian. Sister, my mind is only focused on cultivation and rescuing my father. Where would I have the time to think about such matters? Qin Wentian couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Not answering? Seems like there is. Let me guess. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flickered as she continued. Is it the number one beauty of Chu, Mo Qingqing? I heard that during Chu Tianjiao's banquet, she intentionally invited you over to chat with her. Senior sister, don't guess like that. Qin Wentian smiled bitterly, as the scenes of him meeting Mo Qingqing flashed through his mind. What's there to be embarrassed about? Luo Huan continued smiling. That dainty little lass is indeed beautiful. Her title as the number one beauty of Chu is definitely not just in name. At the very least, I've never seen such a beautiful lass in the royal capital. Not only that, her talent is extremely outstanding. In the royal capital, many of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital covet her. Luo Huan stared at Qin Wentian, as though her interest was piqued. She continued, no matter how I look at it, I feel that only that lass is worthy of my junior brother. Do you want Teacher Mustang to be the matchmaker? That lass's grandfather is your grandmaster. How could Qin Wentian resist Luo Huan's provocation? He could only smile bitterly. If you don't say anything, it means that you've admitted it. A young genius and the number one beauty of Chu. Not bad, not bad. Luo Huan murmured to herself. Qin Yao, who was at the side, couldn't help but laugh when she saw the embarrassed look on Qin Wentian's face. She was thinking in her heart, if Qin Wentian could marry the number one beauty of Chu, that would naturally be the best outcome. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. But what I said was the truth. If you want to pursue that little lass, senior sister will definitely support you. Luo Huan laughed. Today there's a gathering at the Emperor Star Monument. I'm going there now. Wentian, why don't you come with me and take a look at the outstanding students of our Emperor Star Academy? What gathering? Qin Wentian curiously asked. It's almost the end of the year, and many students have already returned to the Emperor Star Academy. They like to gather together to boast, exchange their experiences, or exchange pointers, displaying their accomplishments in the past year. Although there are many who do it for the sake of vanity, there are also some who are truly sincere in their exchange, and can learn something from each other. Luo Huan explained to Qin Wentian. The strength of those who attend the gathering won't be weak. At the very least, they would be at the 7th level of arterial circulation. If not, they wouldn't be able to sit under the Emperor Star Monument. But if you go, you definitely have the qualifications. The number one student of the Emperor Star Academy, a 17-year-old grandmaster, who can create a 3rd-level divine inscription. The Emperor Star Academy has never had such a genius before. Senior sister, don't boast about me. Qin Wentian bitterly smiled. I'll go with senior sister. After all, I don't spend much time in the Emperor Star Academy. I might as well take this opportunity to get to know some of the outstanding students of our academy. I'll go with you as well. Qin Yao laughed. Okay, let's go together. Luo Huan pulled Qin Yao along, and the two of them walked shoulder to shoulder. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Wentian felt a trace of warmth in his heart. Although senior sister Luo Huan loved to joke around, and her words were always irrelevant, she had truly taken care of him and Qin Yao. Not only that, if one didn't pay close attention to it, they wouldn't be able to feel it. Which student of the Emperor Star Academy didn't work hard in their cultivation? Who would waste so much time on outsiders? Senior sister Luo Huan didn't have much of a relationship with Qin Yao, but she would frequently visit Qin Yao and befriend her because she was afraid that Qin Yao would be lonely. Qin Wentian silently engraved this gratitude in his heart. If he were to say it out loud, based on senior sister Luo Huan's personality, she wouldn't even be bothered with him. Within the Emperor Star Academy, there were 9 stone monuments named the Emperor Star Monument. There were many words engraved on them, recording the 3,000 years of history of the Emperor Star Academy. In front of the Emperor Star Monument, there was a circular plaza with stone platforms on it. At this moment, several youthful silhouettes could be seen seated on the stone platforms. Every year, there would be many outstanding students of the Emperor Star Academy sitting on these stone platforms, gazing at the Emperor Star Monument, admiring the glory of their predecessors. At the same time, they were also determined to write down the history of the Emperor Star Academy. Below the stone steps of the plaza, there were even more silhouettes. Their gazes were fixated on the stone platforms, as traces of respect could be seen in their eyes. At this moment, those who were seated on the stone platforms were all outstanding students of the Emperor Star Academy. The cultivation bases of the senior brothers up there should be at least at the 7th level of arterial circulation. I wonder when I'll be able to break through to the 3rd level of arterial circulation. Not only at the 7th level of arterial circulation, all of them have their own achievements. If not, they wouldn't even be able to sit on the stone platforms together with the others. That's right, our Emperor Star Academy has so many years of history. Every year, there would be fresh blood coming in, and there are many geniuses in the academy. Just based on the 3rd level of arterial circulation, there are already many senior brothers at the same level. If they don't have any special abilities, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to compete with the others. Below, many gazed at the silhouettes standing on the stone platforms, discussing which of the students was stronger. They were filled with curiosity towards this. Senior sister Luo Huan from the Green Cloud Association is here. Senior sister Luo Huan is as mesmerizing as ever. The beautiful girl beside her is Qin Yao, and that guy is Qin Wentian. He's here as well. The crowd parted to form a path, and on the stone platforms, there were many gazes directed towards Luo Huan and Qin Wentian. One of them smiled as he stated, "Luo Huan, I heard that you've already stepped into the 9th level of arterial circulation. Come up here quickly. Is junior brother Qin beside me? Please come up here and chat with us." Another person laughed. Luo Huan held onto Qin Wentian's hand as the two of them ascended the stairs, and sat down on 2 adjacent stone platforms. Upon seeing this scene, the eyes of many in the crowd flashed with sharpness. Luo Huan and Qin Wentian appeared to be somewhat intimate, causing some to feel extremely unhappy in their hearts. After all, with Luo Huan's beauty and talent, there were many who pursued her in the Emperor Star Academy. As though he could feel the hostility, Qin Wentian could only smile bitterly in his heart. Senior sister Luo Huan had caused him so much trouble. At this moment, he could clearly feel the coldness in the gazes of those who were looking at him. However, his countenance remained calm as he surveyed the silhouettes on the stone platforms. There were over 30 people on the stone platforms, and their cultivation bases were all at least at the 3rd level of arterial circulation. This was the foundation of the Emperor Star Academy. In the future, these people would all have the opportunity to break through to Yuanfu. Not only that, there were still many who had yet to arrive. For example, Luo Qianqiu, Orkan, and the others. Just within the Emperor Star Academy, there were already so many people at this level. One could only imagine how magnificent the Junlin banquet would be. Chapter 106. In front of the Emperor Star Monument, the various outstanding students sat on the stone platform, attracting the attention of many students. More and more people gathered here. At this moment, a silhouette in front of the Emperor Star Monument smiled and said, "There's less than a month left until the end of the year. To be able to sit together with my fellow brothers and sisters, admiring the glory of our predecessors, and discussing our cultivation experiences is truly a joyous occasion. Senior Chiu is too polite. To be able to sit together and chat with Senior Chiu is already a fortunate thing. Someone politely replied. This person's name is Chiu Mo, and he's extremely powerful. For this generation's 10 prodigies, our Emperor Star Academy has 2. This Chiu Mo is one of them, and he's ranked 4th. Luo Huan whispered to Qin Wentian, who was beside her. Qin Wentian seriously glanced at Chiu Mo. This person was around 18 to 19 years of age, and had a scholarly countenance. His facial features were gentle, and he exuded an amiable aura. Where's the other person? Qin Wentian curiously asked. Beside Chiu Mo, his name is Jiang Xiu, and he's ranked 10th among the 10 prodigies. However, you must not underestimate the person ranked 10th. Although the 10 prodigies are all outstanding youths below the age of 20, their cultivation bases are extremely close to each other. Other than those who have stepped into Yuanfu, the combat prowess of the others wouldn't be too far apart. Luo Huan continued. The 10 prodigies of the royal capital are always the top 3 rankers of the Junlin banquet. Naturally, after the Junlin banquet, the rankings of the 10 prodigies will be rearranged. Luo Cheng, I haven't seen you in the Azura Alliance for the past year. I'm sure that your combat prowess must have improved tremendously. Do you have any insights that you'd like to share? Chiu Mo was ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies, and was regarded as the host of this gathering. He took the initiative to speak to a seemingly mature youth. Although Luo Cheng wasn't that old, he seemed to be in his 20s, and was much more mature compared to his peers. Not only that, there was a hint of wildness in his eyes. The members of the Azura Alliance were all madmen. They were extremely cruel to themselves, and would often train in the dark forest for a year, or even a few years at a time. Not only that, their combat prowess was also extremely outstanding. Is there anyone willing to give it a try? Luo Cheng calmly asked, causing the gazes of the crowd to freeze. Last year, Luo Cheng already had the strength of a cultivator at the 6th level of arterial circulation. It was said that he had already broken through to the 8th level of arterial circulation. Why don't I try? After that, Mountain walked to the center of the public square and stared at Luo Cheng. I'm here to see how much your strength has improved. Mountain, be careful. Luo Huan called out. Mountain grinned as he nodded his head to Qin Wentian. Senior Mountain, what's your current cultivation level? Qin Wentian asked Luo Huan. Peak of the 8th level of arterial circulation, Luo Huan replied. Luo Cheng stood up from the stone platform and walked to the opposite side of the mountain. A large astral blade appeared in his hand, exuding a cold intent. Boom! Luo Cheng stepped out like a demonic beast. His body sank as he slashed out with his saber. A resplendent saber light appeared in the air, resplendent and cold. Big Mountain roared. The mountain rocks roared as he punched out with his fist. It was as tough as steel and it flew towards the saber. However, Luo Cheng's saber changed direction, slashing towards Mountain's throat with the speed of lightning. Even though the sun shone down from the sky, the spectators could still feel the chill of the saber. The edge of the saber was too cold. What a strange saber. Senior Mountain will be at a disadvantage in this battle. Qin Wentian muttered in a low voice. Indeed, after a few clashes, Mountain was starting to feel strained. His attack power wasn't any weaker than his opponent's, and his defense was higher as well. However, Luo Cheng's saber technique was extremely strange. It was a saber technique that was used to kill. It was impossible to tell what kind of innate technique it was. Chi. Another cold light flashed by. The movements of the two of them halted. Luo Cheng's saber had already disappeared, while Mountain stood there in a daze. I've lost. A few strands of hair drifted down from Mountain's head. Mountain only felt a chill in his head. Earlier, if Luo Cheng's saber was just a little bit off, he would have already lost his life. His attacks follow the rules, and his innate techniques don't contain any of his own variations. How can he not be defeated? Luo Cheng calmly spoke as he walked back to the stone platform, calmly sitting down. Many thanks. Mountain recovered very quickly. He smiled at Luo Cheng and returned to his seat, as though he didn't care about his earlier defeat. At this moment, Qin Wentian understood the meaning of this gathering in the Emperor Star Academy. It was a competition between geniuses, learning the strengths of others, and understanding one's own weaknesses. Such a class was even more direct and impactful compared to a teacher's class. Indeed, innate techniques are all created by predecessors. Why can't he infuse his own insights into them? Luo Cheng's saber technique was obviously infused with his own insights, tempered by life and death situations, causing the killing power to be even stronger. Qin Wentian silently mused. He once again thought of the divine inscription diagram he had. That divine inscription diagram was an ideal form of attack that he wanted to achieve. However, he had no way to truly comprehend it. After which, there were a few more people sparring, and each of them had their own unique characteristics. A young student unleashed the power of his arterial circulation to the extreme. Every part of his body seemed to be able to attack, causing Qin Wentian to deeply feel that there was something worth learning from each and every one of them. The students below the stone platform listened to the discussions of their senior brothers and sisters. They were all extremely quiet as they earnestly studied. To them, this was also a rare opportunity. At this moment, on the stone platform, Chiyomo's gaze landed on Qin Wentian as he smiled. Junior brother Qin's talent is outstanding. Being able to create a third-level divine inscription at such a young age, causing your name to shake the entire Chu Empire. Do you have any insights that you would like to share with your senior brothers and sisters? Qin Wentian was a new student of the Emperor Star Academy. Not only that, he was the only new student standing on the stone platform. Hence, the people here were naturally his senior brothers and sisters. My cultivation base is too shallow, and I don't dare to discuss my experiences in front of my senior brothers and sisters. Seriously listening and learning is what Qin Wentian should be doing. Qin Wentian humbly replied. He wasn't being polite. Although his talent was outstanding, and his cultivation speed was extraordinary, he felt that there were still many things that he needed to learn. Junior brother is too humble. Stepping into the 6th level of arterial circulation from the body refinement realm within a year is an extremely rare feat. What's even more admirable is that you have such a high level of comprehension towards divine inscriptions. As we all know, a weaponsmith would need to spend a large amount of time and effort in researching divine inscriptions. Since junior brother is able to cultivate both, how can you not have any good points? Mo continued with a smile on his face, exuding an air of elegance. If I really want to find out the reason, it might be because my first astral soul was a forging-type astral soul, which gave me an advantage in terms of comprehension towards divine inscriptions. In addition to that, my luck was slightly better. Qin Wentian calmly replied. So that's the case. However, I still have to advise junior brother. Cultivation isn't easy, and this world is ultimately a world of martial arts. Strength is the only thing that will never change. Although divine inscriptions are also important, there's no need to waste too much time on cultivation. If not, if you sink too deeply into it, you won't be able to wholeheartedly focus on the path of cultivation. Mo slowly continued. After all, on Wuxia's path, countless geniuses have fallen. Even for those who had outstanding talent when they were young, they would often encounter bottlenecks when they were about to break through to the next level, and would never be able to break through in their entire lives. There were also those who had cultivated extremely quickly, but because their hearts weren't resolute enough, they gradually became mediocre. There are many such examples. Chiyomo's tone sounded as though he was lecturing his junior brother, yet the spectators could faintly feel that something was wrong. Qin Wentian had displayed outstanding talent, and Mo should be congratulating him instead. Even if he wanted to remind Qin Wentian, it was fine if he didn't go overboard. Why did he have to say so much? Not only that, it was as though he was implying that Qin Wentian would become a fallen genius. In this case, intentionally or unintentionally, Mo had already targeted Qin Wentian. However, it wasn't very obvious. Qin Wentian wasn't a mediocre person. He naturally could feel that Mo had spoken too much to him. However, he didn't understand why Mo would target him. After all, he wasn't that familiar with Mo, and there shouldn't be any grudges between them. However, there was no need for him to lose his temper in front of so many people. He casually smiled as he replied, "Senior brother is right. It would naturally be for the best if you could listen to my advice. Xiao nodded his head to Qin Wentian as he continued. Creating a third-rank divine inscription at the age of 17. There has never been such a case in the history of Chu. I'm sure you must have had some fortuitous encounters, and have already created several types of third-rank divine inscriptions, which others don't have. But on the path of cultivation, fortuitous encounters and luck are secondary. You still have to depend on yourself. If one were to say that Xiaomo's earlier words were a little unclear, then the latter part of his words were extremely obvious. That seemingly courteous words, if one were to put it lightly, were to say that he was doubting Qin Wentian. He first said that there had never been a 17-year-old in the history of Chu who created a third-rank divine inscription, and after that, he said that Qin Wentian must have had some fortuitous encounters, and that he had many third-rank divine inscriptions that others didn't have. This was undoubtedly hinting that the divine inscription Qin Wentian created wasn't something Qin Wentian created himself, but something he already had. If one were to take this sentence seriously, it wouldn't just be doubting Qin Wentian. It could even be said that he was extremely vicious. A third-rank divine inscription that had never appeared in the history of Chu. In addition to the fact that he was able to inscribe it at such a young age, how great was his fortuitous encounter? Exactly how many types of divine inscriptions did Qin Wentian have? It was still fine if he was in the academy, but if he was outside the academy, how many people would covet his treasures and act against him? Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. Luo Huan, who was beside him, also had an expression of extreme displeasure on her face. The hidden meaning behind Xiaomo's words was too vicious. Chapter 107. Qin Wentian sat cross-legged on the stone platform as the gazes of the crowd landed on him. Xiaomo's words seemed to have reminded them that the legendary painting scroll, was it really created by Qin Wentian himself? Being able to inscribe a third-rank divine inscription at the age of 17, he must have had some sort of miraculous encounter. Qin Wentian, there's a secret. A thought appeared in the hearts of many as they seriously scrutinized Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian could clearly feel the gazes of the crowd. At this moment, his heart was filled with rage. He was extremely angry, and he naturally had a reason to be angry. Today was the first time he met Xiaomo. If Xiaomo had doubted his cultivation, it was one thing, but to actually target him so viciously, what kind of thoughts were hidden beneath that gentle smile on his face? Staring at the calm eyes of Xiaomo, Qin Wentian suppressed the emotions in his heart as he replied. Senior's words, Qin Wentian doesn't dare to agree. Oh. Xiaomo had a strange expression on his face as he laughed. He stared at Qin Wentian. Could it be that junior brother Qin only wants to rely on miraculous encounters, and not your own hard work to raise your strength? Miraculous encounters are luck, and luck is something that comes naturally. I naturally wouldn't intentionally think about such illusory things. However, isn't luck also a type of strength? Qin Wentian stared at Xiaomo as he continued. Right now, if there's a fourth-ranked divine weapon or a heaven-ranked innate technique placed in front of senior brother, do you want it or not? Naturally, Xiaomo replied. Senior brother, why don't you think of relying on yourself? Why don't you rely on miraculous encounters and directly give up on them? Qin Wentian stared at Xiaomo as he continued asking. Xiaomo stared at Qin Wentian as a look of disdain flashed in his eyes. This is sophistry, ridiculous. Sophistry. Qin Wentian calmly replied. The path of cultivation is extremely treacherous. For experts who stand at the peak, which of them wouldn't experience countless life and death situations? Without some luck, how would they be able to turn calamity into safety? How would they be able to obtain better cultivation arts and stronger innate techniques? For any character that can transcend the heavens, other than their own talent and hard work, they would definitely have good luck as well. Senior, do you agree? I agree. That's why I said that fortuitous encounters are secondary. What's more important is yourself. Junior brother Qin. Why are you in such a hurry to explain? Xiaomo laughed. The third prince of Chu, Chu Tianjiao, had a fortuitous encounter the moment he was born. Because he was born in the royal clan of Chu, such a fortuitous encounter allowed him to have sufficient cultivation resources to support his cultivation. Hence, the people of Chu referred to him as the heavens chosen of his generation, and were filled with reverence and respect. Senior, do you dare to stand in front of Chu Tianjiao and say, because you were born in the royal clan, you have to remember that in order to cultivate, you have to depend on yourself? Qin Wentian wasn't happy or angry, as he calmly spoke. The atmosphere on the stone platform suddenly turned strange. Qiu Mo was intentionally targeting Qin Wentian. The crowd could naturally tell. After all, he was a senior brother, and was ranked number 4 among the 10 prodigies of Chu. Even if he was intentionally targeting Qin Wentian, there wasn't much fault to be found in his words. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian actually used Chu Tianjiao to refute Qiu Mo. Ridiculous. What qualifications do you have to be mentioned in the same breath as the third prince? A cold voice drifted over. Qin Wentian shifted his gaze onto the person who spoke. It was none other than Jiang Xiu, who stood beside Qiu Mo. Jiang Xiu was also one of the 10 prodigies of Chu, but he was ranked at the bottom of the 10 prodigies. For those ranked above him, he naturally had a sense of respect, not to mention Chu Tianjiao, who was ranked number 2. Qin Wentian had used Chu Tianjiao as an example, as though he was placing Chu Tianjiao in the same breath as himself. Naturally, he was unhappy. Today, Qin Wentian came here to listen to the exchange of views between his senior brothers. Yet he didn't expect that there would be someone intentionally targeting him. He was originally a hot-blooded youth, but after being repeatedly provoked, the blood in his chest started to boil. Involuntarily, he coldly snorted. Why can't I be mentioned in the same breath? The third prince, Chu Tianjiao, has already stepped into Yuanfu over a year ago. And what's your current cultivation level? Jiang Xiu stared at Qin Wentian, as a cold intent flickered in his eyes. I've only been in the Emperor Star Academy for a year, and I've already stepped into the 6th level of arterial circulation from the body refinement realm. I even defeated a senior student, Yanaro. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that my combat prowess is comparable to a cultivator at the 7th level of arterial circulation. I can inscribe 3rd-level divine inscriptions. How many youths in Chu below the age of 20 can do that? Why can't I be compared to Chu Tianjiao? Now that I'm inferior to him, could it be that I'm destined to be inferior to him forever? The arrogance in Qin Wentian's heart was ignited. Staring at Jiang Xiu, he retorted. According to your logic, those who are weak wouldn't dare to compare themselves to those stronger than them. Could it be that they only dare to compare themselves to those weaker than them? How ridiculous. You don't even have the confidence to chase after the strong, not to mention surpassing your predecessors. Seems like there's a reason why you're ranked at the bottom of the 10 prodigies. Impudent. Jiang Xiu was provoked by Qin Wentian's words, and he couldn't help but berate him, as a cold light flickered in his eyes. Qin Wentian's words were impolite, and he didn't have the self-restraint of Qiu Mo. He, Jiang Xiu, was one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Whenever he walked in the academy, he would always be looked up to by others. But at this moment, in front of so many students, he was actually insulted by a freshman. Naturally, he would feel embarrassed and his face would lose all face. What impudent! As a cultivator, shouldn't we have the confidence and will to become stronger? Everyone here is an outstanding student of the Emperor Star Academy, who would be willing to be inferior to others. Today, senior brother Qiu Mo used such words to teach me. The reason is very simple. It's because he is stronger than me. Qin Wentian slowly spoke, causing the hearts of the spectators to agree. Qin Wentian's words had hit the nail on the head. The reason why Qiu Mo said such words to Qin Wentian was because Qiu Mo was stronger than him. Qiu Mo was ranked number 4 among the 10 prodigies, while Qin Wentian was only at the 6th level of arterial circulation. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, if it was Chu Tianjiao, Qiu Mo wouldn't have said such words. Because Chu Tianjiao was stronger than Qiu Mo. Of course, if Qiu Mo only wanted to teach, Qin Wentian wouldn't be so angry. But Qiu Mo had ulterior motives, and was intentionally targeting Qin Wentian. The atmosphere grew increasingly strange. Qiu Mo's countenance flickered. He didn't expect Qin Wentian's words to be so sharp. Finally, it was still Qiu Mo who broke the silence. Qiu Mo had a smile on his face, as an indistinct aura gushed forth from him. His body slowly floated up from the stone platform, as a powerful surge of yuan energy permeated the air. Gradually, the cross-legged Qiu Mo floated up into the air, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Yuanfu realm. Senior brother Qiu Mo has stepped into Yuanfu. How powerful! The rankings of the 10 prodigies were updated at the end of last year. Senior brother Qiu Mo was ranked 4th, while Immortal Drunken Wine was ranked 3rd. If Immortal Drunken Wine hadn't broken through to Yuanfu, senior brother Qiu Mo would have replaced his position. For a moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Evidently, many people were shocked. Advancing from the arterial circulation realm to Yuanfu was an extremely difficult feat. Many geniuses had to spend a long period of time before they could break through. There were also many geniuses who displayed outstanding talent at the arterial circulation realm, only to become mediocre after they broke through to Yuanfu. The difference between each realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. From a certain perspective, Qiumo's lesson to Qin Wentian wasn't wrong. Indeed, many geniuses had fallen. Now that Qiu Mo had broken through to Yuanfu, he undoubtedly had the qualifications to guide Qin Wentian, because he had already proven himself. He, who was ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies, would only grow stronger after he broke through to Yuanfu. Slowly he would pull apart the distance between him and those who had yet to break through. Even if Immortal Drunken Wine couldn't break through, the distance between them would still be pulled apart. Naturally, stepping into Yuanfu also meant that Qiu Mo would no longer be able to participate in the Junlin banquet. However, compared to breaking through to Yuanfu, the Junlin banquet wasn't as important. After all, the purpose of the Junlin banquet was to spar against the geniuses. Only the top few would be able to obtain generous rewards. And as for Qiu Mo, if he didn't break through to Yuanfu, even if his cultivation base had already reached the peak of arterial circulation, he wouldn't dare to say that he would be able to obtain one of the top 3 positions in the Junlin banquet. You're right, I have the qualifications to guide you. There's no other reason than because I'm stronger than you. Qiu Mo floated in the air, staring at Qin Wentian. At this moment, his arrogance was unmasked. Junior brother Qin, isn't it a little too impetuous to be angered because of a single sentence? Not only that, what I've said isn't wrong. How many geniuses have fallen in the past? Even in the Emperor Star Academy, there are many who are unable to graduate. Why is that? Because you're unable to break through to Yuanfu. Now that you've encountered a fortuitous encounter, you're able to break through to Yuanfu. However, if you were to delay your breakthrough by 5 to 6 years, you would already be left far behind by others. How would you be able to compete with the other geniuses? Qiu Mo's tone was as though he was lecturing Qin Wentian. After breaking through to Yuanfu, he had already placed himself in a higher position, as though he was lecturing a junior who didn't listen to his advice. If senior brother sincerely guided me, Qin Wentian would naturally listen to your advice. However, from your tone, it's as though you've already determined that I'm merely relying on fortuitous encounters to achieve my current accomplishments. Sooner or later I'll fall. This sounds more like a curse. Qin Wentian stared at Qiu Mo as he continued. My cultivation time is still short, and I don't dare to say that I've achieved much. But at the very least, I've taken one step at a time, steadfast in my heart. Although I've encountered some fortuitous encounters, my will to cultivate has never wavered. What senior brother said is correct. Since you've broken through to Yuanfu, you naturally have the qualifications to guide me. However, you're only at Yuanfu. Senior brother, you seem to be placing yourself too high. Those who don't know might think that only senior brother Qiu Mo has broken through to Yuanfu. Qin Wentian's calm voice contained a hint of provocation within. He stared at Qiu Mo as he continued. Compared to me, you merely started cultivating a few years earlier. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the surrounding crowd fell into silence. It was as though only his voice could be heard. At this moment, Qin Wentian's words were getting sharper and sharper, as though he was in direct opposition to Qiu Mo. Chapter 108. Qiu Mo, a Yuanfu cultivator, ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Qin Wentian, a rising star of the Emperor Star Academy. Within a short span of a year, his name shook the entire Chu country. He was a genius that could inscribe third-level divine inscriptions. Qiu Mo was a senior disciple, and he indeed had the qualifications to guide Qin Wentian. However, his words were clearly directed at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian naturally had to retort. There were many Yuanfu cultivators in the Emperor Star Academy, and this Qiu Mo was humble at the start. But after that, it was as though he was the only Yuanfu cultivator in the entire academy. What junior brother Qin said is correct. Senior Qiu Mo only started cultivating a few years earlier than you. Yet he dares to lecture junior brother Qin in such a manner? It's as though you are the only one who could break through to Yuanfu. If I didn't remember wrongly, let alone when you first entered the Emperor Star Academy. Even if it was last year, your achievements were far from being comparable to junior brother Qin's. Luo Huan's voice rang out as she smiled. If Senior Qiu didn't start cultivating a few years earlier, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to criticize junior brother Qin. There's no point in arguing. Since both sides are unhappy, why don't we exchange pointers? Jiang Xiu coldly continued. Today is an exchange of pointers. Words won't be as persuasive as practice. You really know how to talk big. Qiu Mo started cultivating a few years earlier than junior brother Qin. And you want them to exchange pointers? Why don't you go and spar with the other Yuanfu cultivators instead? Mountain coldly snorted as he spoke with a hint of anger in his voice. Exchanging pointers doesn't necessarily have to rely on one's own strength. If Senior Qiu sparred with junior brother Qin, he naturally wouldn't be able to suppress his cultivation base. At this moment, a person at the side spoke. Seeing that Qiu Mo had already returned to his seat, he couldn't help but laugh. In our Emperor Star Academy, there's a precedent of not using Yuan energy as a foundation, but only using innate techniques. This is a test of one's comprehension and adaptability. Isn't it perfect? Although that's the case, Qiu Mo's cultivation base is at the Yuanfu realm. His mind is extremely clear, and his perception is even more acute. In addition to the fact that his cultivation base is higher than Qin Wentian's, it's only natural that his comprehension of innate techniques would be deeper. The two of them are at different cultivation bases, and their physiques are on different levels. Qiu Mo naturally has the advantage. Luo Huan stared at that person as she continued. Even so, Qiu Mo still has the advantage. I haven't broken through to Yuanfu yet. Why don't I represent Senior Qiu Mo to spar with him? Jiang Xiu suddenly said. Qin Wentian is so arrogant, and Luo Huan, you have so much confidence in him. Let me test him, and let everyone see where his capital lies. If he continues to refuse with all sorts of excuses, I will not say anything more. A cold smile appeared in Jiang Xiu's eyes as he directly provoked Chu Feng. Luo Huan frowned and looked at Qin Wentian. After all, Qin Wentian had only been in the Emperor Star Academy for a year. Not only that, he had also cultivated divine inscriptions. His proficiency in innate techniques was much lower than Qin Wentian's. Since they weren't competing in terms of Yuan Qi, and were only competing in terms of innate techniques, the more proficient one was in, the greater the advantage he would have. Qiu Mo didn't continue speaking. Since Jiang Xiu had spoken on his behalf, he was naturally willing to remain silent. The gazes of the crowd landed on Qin Wentian. His countenance was as calm as ever, and no one could tell what he was thinking. At this moment, Qin Wentian was contemplating. He had never offended Qiu Mo or Jiang Xiu before, but why did the two of them seem to have a grudge against him? Today, it seemed as though they wanted to humiliate him, as though they wanted to prove to everyone that he, Qin Wentian, was merely relying on fortuitous encounters to achieve some accomplishments. In reality, his talent was nothing but trash, and he was destined to fall in the future. Since he couldn't figure it out, Qin Wentian didn't think too much about it. The crowd only saw him slowly standing up from the stone platform as he walked towards the center of the circular plaza, facing Jiang Xiu as he calmly stated, "Senior brother, please guide me." Qin Wentian stood in the center of the plaza, staring straight at Jiang Xiu. Actions were far more persuasive than words. Jiang Xiu stared at Qin Wentian as he stood up as well. His silhouette flickered as he soared through the air, directly landing in front of Qin Wentian. "You're welcome." Jiang Xiu's eyes gleamed with sharpness, akin to an unsheathed sword. His words were indeed extremely impolite. Junior brother's cultivation is still shallow, and my understanding of innate techniques isn't very profound. I only have a superficial understanding of them. I hope senior brother will show mercy. Qin Wentian was as humble as ever, causing the crowd to be puzzled. This wasn't the same him as before. "Hehe, I use my sword as my weapon. You can choose your weapon." Jiang Xiu unsheathed a sword from his back. Although it was a divine weapon, if one didn't infuse their yuan qi into it, it would be no different from an ordinary weapon. Since the two of them had agreed not to spar using yuan qi, it was naturally best to use weapons to determine a victor. If not, if one didn't use their astral energy, they wouldn't be able to unleash palm imprints. How could they even talk about innate techniques? "I use my halberd as my weapon." Qin Wentian retrieved his ancient halberd from his interspatial ring. His hands gripped the hilt of the halberd. The tip of the halberd pointed to the ground, as the two crescent-shaped blades gleamed with a cold light. "Please." Qin Wentian held the ancient halberd tightly in his hands as he stared at Jiang Xiu, his countenance as calm as ever. Jiang Xiu's palms trembled slightly as his sword shimmered with a cold light. He slowly stepped out, walking towards Qin Wentian. Although he didn't use any yuan qi, both of them were at the perfection circle of the body refinement realm, and the strength of their fleshly bodies were naturally tyrannical. Sword shadows flickered as a beam of sword light pierced towards Qin Wentian, exuding a cold intent. Shadow Snow Sword Art. The people on the platform were all extraordinary individuals. They instantly recognized that this was a low-tier, earth-grade innate technique from the 4th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, the Shadow Snow Sword Art. The sword was as cold as snow, the sword light penetrating the shadows. This straight sword strike was akin to a bolt of lightning, aiming straight for Qin Wentian's throat. Qin Wentian retreated 2 steps, as his ancient halberd abruptly pierced out, aiming for the tip of Jiang Xiu's sword, intending to clash head-on with his opponent. How exquisite is the Shadow Snow Sword Art? How can it be captured? The spectators mused silently, after which, the sword technique abruptly changed, resembling snowflakes drifting down gracefully, transforming into an arc as it shot towards the center of Qin Wentian's brows. Jiang Xiu's body also moved along with the sword, exuding an aura of elegance. Even if he doesn't use yuan qi to battle, it can still be so exquisite. This way, the spectators can clearly see senior brother Jiang Xiu's swordplay. The spectators below couldn't help but exclaim in admiration when they saw this scene. What an exquisite swordplay! If Jiang Xiu were to borrow the power of his yuan qi, how powerful would that sword strike be? Qin Wentian continued to retreat, yet the ancient halberd in his hand danced about, transforming into a vortex as the silhouette of a Xuanwu divine turtle appeared. Jiang Xiu's swordplay had no way to break through the defense of the Xuanwu divine turtle. That's the mid-tier earth-grade berserk beast halberd art. It's extremely tyrannical and has extremely high requirements for the cultivator. To think that Qin Wentian would actually choose to cultivate a halberd technique. Senior brother Jiang Xiu changed his stance. It's the Starpoint swordplay. The spectators only saw Jiang Xiu's swordplay changing. The sword light was akin to starlight, unceasingly piercing out, breaking through the defense of the ancient halberd. It was as though as long as the halberd was given the slightest opening, it would be able to strike Qin Wentian. Berserk Beast Halberd Art. Vermilion Bird Stance. Qin Wentian's halberd technique was also changing, executing the Vermilion Bird Stance. His halberd technique became extremely nimble and sharp, as though he wanted to use technique to break technique. Clanging sounds rang out unceasingly, and in that short instant, it was unknown how many times the two of them had clashed. Such close combat, it's extremely dangerous. A single mistake and victory would be forfeit. The spectators only saw that the speed of the battle between the two was increasing. Even without the use of yuan energy, the sword shadows were still as domineering as ever. Qin Wentian's halberd technique wasn't inferior to Qin Wentian's. Although it wasn't as magnificent as Qin Wentian's, his defense was as steady as a boulder, and his attacks were like dragons and tigers, extremely tyrannical. Not only that, despite the numerous clashes between the two of them, Qin Wentian's arms were still as steady as ever. Each and every one of his attacks were deadly. Without the use of yuan energy, it would only depend on whose comprehension of the innate techniques was deeper, and who would be able to break the stalemate. From the current situation, Jiang Xiu's swordplay was constantly changing, pressing down on Qin Wentian with every step. Most of the time, Qin Wentian was in a defensive stance, and if this continued, Qin Wentian would definitely lose. However, Qin Wentian didn't seem to have such an awareness. Although he was in a defensive stance most of the time, he was as steady as Mount Tai, not revealing any openings. Under the constant attacks of his opponent, Qin Wentian didn't make a single mistake. Seems like Qin Wentian's reputation isn't undeserved. Although he seems to be in a disadvantageous position, he's actually extremely stable. Although his control over the types of innate techniques is far inferior to his opponents, he's always able to turn danger into safety at the most crucial moment. The spectators on the platform saw more. There were two reasons why Qin Wentian could be so stable in such a fast-paced battle. Firstly, he was extremely proficient in using the innate techniques that he was familiar with, and would never make a mistake due to panic. Secondly, his awareness was extremely sharp, and he was able to capture all of his opponent's attacks under immense pressure without making any mistakes. Sword Heart's Lonely Shadow. The spectators only heard a shout. Jiang Xiu's sword technique changed yet again, as his entire person exuded an indomitable aura. His sword was like a lonely shadow, breaking apart everything. Every beam of sword light was as cold as ice. Qin Wentian retreated unceasingly, causing the spectators to sigh silently. In the end, Qin Wentian was still going to be defeated. Who would have thought that Jiang Xiu would be able to cultivate the Sword Heart's Lonely Shadow to such a level? This sword technique moved according to his will, and regardless of speed or exquisiteness, it had already reached the pinnacle of Jiang Xiu's techniques. Qin Wentian's defense grew more and more chaotic. Defeat. In that instant, Jiang Xiu's entire person was akin to a sharp sword, piercing out with a graceful grace. Azure Dragon Stance. Qin Wentian roared in rage as he similarly pierced out with his ancient halberd. The simplest stance, the most tyrannical attack. Release. Jiang Xiu's gaze was as sharp as a sword. The sword in his hand moved according to his will. After a total of 9 transformations, the ancient halberd in Qin Wentian's hand slipped away. But at the same time, Jiang Xiu's sword also deviated slightly. Qin Wentian is defeated. Upon seeing this scene, the hearts of the spectators silently mused. Jiang Xiu's sword could end the battle in an instant. Jiang Xiu's swordplay was superior in its ingenuity. Although the berserk beast halberd art was tyrannical, there was no energy infused within it. Hence it was unable to unleash its full might. However, at this instant, the spectators saw Qin Wentian advancing instead of retreating. His palms slapped out forcefully, directly imprinting an imprint on the back of the sword. Courting death. Jiang Xiu coldly snorted. The sword in his hand arced through the air in a perfect arc, slashing horizontally towards Qin Wentian. However, he saw that Qin Wentian's footwork was incomparably exquisite, moving at the same frequency as his sword. At the same time, Qin Wentian stretched his hands out, grabbing hold of the ancient halberd that had slipped out of his hands. At this moment, the distance between Jiang Xiu and Qin Wentian was only a foot apart. Jiang Xiu's left hand slapped out, while Qin Wentian similarly slapped out with his palm. The two colliding bodies instantly pulled apart a certain distance. At the same instant, the vermilion bird stance of the berserk beast halberd art swept out, incomparably sharp. In an instant, the crescent-shaped tip of the ancient halberd landed on Jiang Xiu's neck, while his sword was still a distance away from Qin Wentian. Chapter 109. This sudden reversal caused the gazes of many in the crowd to freeze as expressions of astonishment appeared on their faces. Earlier, Qin Wentian's explosive footwork was extremely exquisite, and he didn't even use any yuan energy. It was purely a movement technique, yet it was as though he could move according to his heart's desire. What was even more shocking was that at the last moment, he had perfectly utilized his footwork into his attack. It was as though he had already calculated everything in his mind, and was certain that Jiang Xiu would be defeated the moment his attack landed. At this moment, Jiang Xiu's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Although this battle didn't involve the use of Yuan energy, and had nothing to do with a real battle, it was still possible to see the proficiency of the innate techniques used by the two combatants, as well as their talent in perception. Since he was defeated, it meant that he was inferior to Qin Wentian. Not only that, his earlier words weren't polite at all. My cultivation is still shallow, and I don't know many innate techniques. Maybe I was lucky enough to win by a single move. Qin Wentian stared at Jiang Xiu as he smiled. His voice was as calm as ever, yet this casual tone of his sounded exceptionally piercing to Jiang Xiu's ears. Qin Wentian's cultivation was still shallow, and he didn't know many innate techniques. Yet he was still able to win against him. In that case, didn't that mean that he, Jiang Xiu, was even weaker? Not only that, when Qin Wentian said that he was lucky, wasn't it also a reply to Qiu Mo and Jiang Xiu? Qiu Mo and Jiang Xiu had always been targeting Qin Wentian, and the meaning behind their words was that Qin Wentian's current achievements were all due to luck and fortuitous encounters. Jiang Xiu lifted his palms and slapped out with an immense force, slapping away the ancient halberd that Qin Wentian had placed on his neck. The immense force of the impact caused Qin Wentian's arms to tremble slightly. Losing in a single move could be due to luck or carelessness. The attainments of the two of you in your innate techniques aren't bad, especially Jiang Xiu, who is proficient in many different types of powerful sword techniques. If it wasn't for the restrictions on combat, and if it was a true battle, there wouldn't have been a need to use so many moves to determine the victor. Jiang Xiu's sword techniques, infused with astral energy, would have long since torn apart junior brother Qin's defense. Qiu Mo seemed to have prepared his words, as he calmly spoke. From a certain perspective, his words weren't without reason. Earlier, Jiang Xiu's sword strikes were all fatal. It was only because he couldn't use his yuan qi that the power of his attacks was limited. If not, even if their cultivation bases were similar, Qin Wentian might not be able to defend against his attacks. However, from another perspective, Jiang Xiu had clearly lost. Yet, Qiu Mo still commented in such a manner. Wasn't it a little unreasonable? At this moment, everyone could see that Qiu Mo was deliberately targeting Qin Wentian. Since we're already exchanging pointers, why don't we just fight it out? Junior brother Qin, what do you think? Qiu Mo smiled at Qin Wentian. At this moment, a voice drifted out from the crowd below. Qiu Mo's gaze shifted over, only to see a fatty walking up the stairs. However, the fatty didn't continue up the stairs, and was staring at him with his hands on his hips. Senior brother Qiu Mo, if the 10 prodigies of the royal capital were to be ranked again, I feel that senior brother Qin Wentian should be ranked first. Fatty's voice caused the crowd to turn silent, as expressions of interest appeared on the faces of many. Naturally, there were also some who recognized Fatty. He was none other than Qin Wentian's best friend, Fan Le. Back then, Qin Wentian and Fan Le had fought on the platform twice. The first time was to kill Orphan, and the second time was to deal with Morongfeng and Du Hao. Naturally, there were many who recognized Fatty. Not only that, Fatty Fan Le's talent was exceedingly high. It was only because he was together with Qin Wentian that his radiance was overshadowed. Some people knew that during this period of time, Fatty Fan Le would frequently go to the Dreamsky Forest, and his combat prowess had risen rapidly. It was said that Elder Mustang wouldn't personally guide Qin Wentian, but would instead guide Fan Le. This was because Fatty Fan Le was simply too lazy. Lazy people needed to be supervised. Why? Luo Huan smiled as she looked at Fan Le. I heard that senior brother Qiu Mo is ranked 4th among the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. There's no need to talk about the other 3, but if they fought against senior brother Qiu Mo, they might not be able to win. Even if they won, it would be due to luck or fortuitous encounters. Don't take it too seriously. Not only that, their cultivation paths are all based on luck, and only senior brother Qiu Mo's talent is number 1. Not relying on any fortuitous encounters or external factors, he was still able to break through to Yuanfu. Let me ask you, who can compare to him? Fan Le spoke with assurance, causing the crowd to be dumbfounded. This fellow's words were completely unreasonable, but after thinking about it carefully, the crowd naturally understood the hidden meaning behind Fan Li's words. What kind of logic is this? Chiu Mo furrowed his brows. He could naturally hear the sarcasm in Fan Li's words. Qin Wentian was able to create a third-level divine imprint, but you think that it was because of luck and fortuitous encounters that he obtained it? Qin Wentian only cultivated for a year, yet he was already at the 6th level of arterial circulation, and was able to defeat Yanaro. He relied on external factors to achieve his current level of combat prowess. There are too many geniuses that have fallen, and he might not even be able to break through to Yuanfu in the future. Not only that, he agreed to your request to spar with Jiang Xiao. Yet you say that it was due to luck and carelessness. Fan Le laughed as he looked at Chiu Mo. In the Emperor Star Academy, only senior brother Chiu Mo relied on his own efforts to cultivate. For the others, if they didn't rely on fortuitous encounters, they wouldn't even be able to break through to Yuanfu. I really don't understand where senior brother Chiu Mo's logic comes from. And where does his self-confidence come from? After speaking, Fan Le even bowed in the direction of Chiu Mo. This kind of sarcasm was extremely direct, causing Chiu Mo's countenance to turn extremely unsightly. A win is a win, a loss is a loss. Qin Wentian was able to defeat Jiang Xiao in a battle of innate techniques. How could it be due to luck and fortuitous encounters? It was all because Jiang Xiao's mastery of swordsmanship wasn't high enough. Since he was defeated, he should just accept it humbly. Luo Cheng also couldn't bear to watch. It wasn't that he had the intention to help Qin Wentian. It was just that his personality was like this. Speaking of which, Qin Wentian and Qin Wentian had some grudges. Luo Cheng and Luo Qianxia were both members of the Azura Alliance, so he naturally wouldn't intentionally help Qin Wentian. If Jiang Xiao, one of the 10 prodigies, used his cultivation base to suppress Qin Wentian, what meaning would there be if he won? Luo Cheng's words were very direct, but in Jiang Xiao's ears, it was undoubtedly a kind of provocation and mockery. Seems like you've made some progress in your cultivation this year, and now you want to contend for the position of one of the 10 prodigies? If you want, there's no need to wait until the Junlin banquet. I can give you a chance today. Jiang Xiao stared at Luo Cheng, his eyes like sharp swords piercing out, incomparably sharp. Although he was ranked at the bottom of the 10 prodigies, this ranking was made at the end of last year. The current him already had a cultivation base at the 9th level of arterial circulation. And this year, he originally wanted to take another step forward. What's there to be afraid of? Luo Cheng's countenance was as calm as ever as he calmly replied. He didn't place as much importance on victory or defeat as Jiang Xiao did. This year's Junlin banquet was to temper himself, and if he could become one of the top few rankers, it would naturally be for the best. But if he couldn't, it wouldn't be a bad thing if he could increase his strength. Since Jiang Xiao wanted to fight earlier, why not? Fine, but before that, let me first teach junior brother Qin how to be a person. Jiang Xiao shifted his gaze, once again looking at Qin Wentian. At this moment, the sword in his hands emitted a dazzling radiance, sharper and colder than before. Evidently, this time around, Jiang Xiao had infused his astral energy into the sword. Qin Wentian was speechless. Today it had always been Chiu Mo and Jiang Xiao dealing with him. But now they actually wanted to teach him how to be a person? To put it bluntly, it was the same words that Qin Wentian had said not long ago. Regardless of Chiu Mo or Jiang Xiao, the reason why they dared to be so overbearing was because their strength was stronger than Qin Wentian. Qi. A cold sword light, as dazzling as the constellations, pierced towards Qin Wentian. In an instant, it was as though there were countless specks of sword light shooting out, as resplendent as the astral light. The ancient halberd in Qin Wentian's hands danced in the air. Momentarily, a Xuanwu diagram appeared in front of him, and the sword light unceasingly pierced into it, tearing apart the defense. The sword was graceful, as though there was no technique behind it. As it pierced out, the Xuanwu diagram was torn apart, and the defense of the ancient halberd was broken apart. Jiang Xiao had a cultivation base at the 9th level of arterial circulation, while Qin Wentian was only at the 6th level. The disparity between them was too great. and the astral energy that erupted forth from Jiang Xiu's 9 arterial circulation meridians was incomparably ferocious. Qin Wentian's silhouette was like the wind as he retreated, his footwork incomparably exquisite. 9 Heavenly Garuda movement technique. At this moment, the spectators clearly saw Qin Wentian's movement technique, as expressions of astonishment appeared on their faces. Qin Wentian had actually cultivated this extremely difficult movement technique, and had even cultivated it to an extremely exquisite level. His movements were akin to that of a Garuda rock. Jiang Xiu's 2 consecutive sword strikes had failed. How could he let go of his pride? His silhouette flickered as sword light flashed out once again. Sword Heart's lonely shadow. In that instant, his entire person was like a sword, transforming into a shadow as a tempest of swords engulfed the entire stage. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened, and he pushed his defense and movement technique to their limits. However, his defense was still broken apart by Jiang Xiu's sword technique. A chi-chi sound rang out as a corner of his robes was torn apart by the sword chi. Impudent. Luo Huang coldly snorted. Abruptly, the shadow of a whip flickered as a beam of light descended from the heavens, accompanied by a whistling sound. Jiang Xiu's countenance froze. The sword light abruptly changed as it pierced out in the air, colliding with the long whip. Croak. A crisp sound rang out as the long whip collided with Jiang Xiu's sword, after which, the whip danced in the air like a venomous snake, coiling towards Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu furrowed his brows. He didn't expect Luo Huan's strength to be so strong. Seems like this year's worth of cultivation wasn't wasted. A cold light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes when he saw this scene from the side. Since Jiang Xiu wanted to bully him, he didn't need to care about the rules and morals anymore. Chapter 110. Qin Wentian tightened his grip on the ancient halberd, infusing his astral energy into it as he stared at the battle between Luo Huan and Jiang Xiu. The longer one was, the more dangerous it would be. Luo Huan's whip swept through the clouds, and although Jiang Xiu's swordsmanship was profound, he was still forced into a defensive stance. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Wentian naturally understood that back then when Luo Huan helped him temper his movement technique, she had never used her true whip techniques. At this moment, Luo Huan's whip technique was like a phantom that filled the skies. Every time it landed, a howl of rage could be heard, as though a storm was brewing. Qin Wentian stepped out, his entire person transforming into a shadow. After which, the spectators only saw a silhouette soaring through the air, like a bird of prey, transforming into a beam of light, descending on the space above Jiang Xiu's head. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted as the wings of a Garuda appeared on Qin Wentian's back. At the same time, the ancient halberd was pointed downwards towards Jiang Xiu. With a howl of rage, the might of a gigantic mountain pressed downwards, akin to the roar of an azure dragon. The berserk beast halberd technique instantly descended on Jiang Xiu's head, causing Jiang Xiu's countenance to turn pale white. Despicable. Jiang Xiu slashed out with his sword, wanting to tear apart Qin Wentian's attack. However, the ancient halberd was incomparably tyrannical, as heavy as a mountain, crushing down on his sword. His sword couldn't even move. Pa! A crisp sound rang out. Jiang Xiu's robes were torn apart as fresh blood spurted out. The long whip lashed out at his chest, sending him flying through the air as he landed heavily on the ground, his sword falling to the ground. From the moment Qin Wentian attacked to the moment Jiang Xiu was struck, only a short period of time had passed. The countenances of the spectators froze as strange expressions appeared on their faces. Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies, was actually beaten up and humiliated in public? This was simply a rumor in the Emperor Star Academy. Impudent. Qiu Mo roared in rage as the aura of a Yuanfu cultivator gushed forth. Luo Huan stood in front of Qin Wentian, blocking his path. Could it be that Senior Qiu Mo wants to bully me and my junior brother just because you're at the Yuanfu realm? At this moment, Jiang Xiu stood up from the ground, his body radiating a violent sword will. His expression was as gloomy as water, extremely ugly to look at. He was one of the capital's 10 prodigies. To him, being beaten up in public was a great humiliation. The gazes of everyone in the Emperor Star Academy were all on him. If he didn't wash away this humiliation, how would he be able to face others in the future? You actually fought 2 against 1, and even ambushed me. Xiao Mo coldly snorted as he took a step forwards. His tyrannical aura gushed forth, pressing down on Luo Huan and Qin Wentian. The pressure was so strong that it was suffocating. The difference between the Yuanfu realm and the arterial circulation realm was an insurmountable gap. Jiang Xiao is one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital, a genius of the Emperor Star Academy. Junior brother Qin is just a new student. Earlier when Jiang Xiao acted against junior brother Qin, Senior Qiao Mo didn't say anything to stop him, right? Luo Huan's beautiful eyes stared at Qiao Mo as she continued. Furthermore, could it be that junior brother Qin's strength is enough to pose a threat to Jiang Xiao? The 10 prodigies of the royal capital shouldn't be so weak, right? There's a gap of 3 levels between him and junior brother Qin. In my opinion, he should be able to ignore junior brother Qin's attack. Luo Huan didn't forget to mock Jiang Xiao, causing Jiang Xiao's countenance to turn increasingly unsightly. That's right, Jiang Xiao was one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital with a cultivation base at the 9th level of the arterial circulation realm, while Qin Wentian was only at the 6th level. Logically speaking, Qin Wentian shouldn't pose a threat to him at all, unless he admitted that Qin Wentian was stronger than him. Xiao Mo, their battle has nothing to do with you. At this moment, Luo Cheng's voice drifted over. Xiao Mo turned his gaze over as a cold glint of light flickered in the depths of his eyes. Since you've already broken through to Yuanfu, you should go and fight against Yuanfu seniors instead. Why are you trying to act like a hero here? Luo Cheng didn't give any face to Qiao Mo. Not only that, this battle was initiated by Jiang Xiao himself. If you're a man, go and settle it yourself. If Jiang Xiao, who is ranked last among the 10 prodigies of the royal capital, needs help from others, then that's the end of the line. At the end of the year, after the Junlin banquet, Jiang Xiao's name will no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Luo Cheng's voice was calm, as though he was speaking of an extremely ordinary matter, causing the spectators below to sigh. Every year after the Junlin banquet, the rankings of the 10 prodigies would change. Naturally, this year's Junlin banquet was no exception. Luo Cheng bluntly stated that Jiang Xiao, who was ranked number 10, not only would he not be able to improve his ranking, he would be eliminated from the ranks of the 10 prodigies and be surpassed by the younger generations. The 2 of you, come at me together. Jiang Xiao roared in rage as he released his sword-type astral soul. Sword Qi howled in rage, incomparably tyrannical. His eyes were as sharp as swords, as he stared at Luo Huan and Qin Wentian. At this moment, the flesh on his chest could still be seen, as fresh blood dyed his robes red. At this moment, his rage had already reached the limit. As the sound of his voice faded, he took a step forward. Sword Qi howled in rage as a beam of sword light slashed out, cleaving towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian stabbed out with his ancient halberd as the shadow of the black tortoise appeared. The shadow of the black tortoise shattered as Qin Wentian felt an even sharper aura gushing towards him. You don't know what's good for you. Luo Huan coldly snorted. Her beautiful eyes finally flashed with anger as she released her astral soul as well. At the same time, the long whip in her hands lashed out in a frenzy, as though a storm was raging in the sky. The shadows of the whip flooded the entire space, completely blocking out the sword light. At this moment, the spectators all had expressions of shock on their faces. So it turned out that Luo Huan's strength was already this powerful. Even without Qin Wentian's help, Jiang Xiao might not be able to do anything to her. Indeed, you don't know what's good for you. Can't you tell that Luo Huan's strength is already not inferior to yours? A look of disdain flashed in Luo Cheng's eyes as he saw Jiang Xiao still persisting in his attacks. In the previous 10 prodigies, Jiang Xiao was ranked number 10. From his point of view, it was because the competition last year was too weak. But this year was different, the competition would be even more intense. Luo Huan already had the strength to contend for the top spot. But for himself, he also wanted to fight for it. Not only that, he knew that Luo Qianqiu's combat prowess was stronger than his. Luo Qianqiu, who had already stepped into the 8th level of arterial circulation, was currently in closed-door seclusion. Luo Qing only had a single goal: to obtain the top spot in the Junlin banquet. At the end of the year, there would be no Yuanfu cultivators present. Qin Wentian didn't make another move. He stared at the two of them as he sarcastically stated, "Not to mention the 10 prodigies. Even if the top 15 were to be ranked this year, Yu Jiangxiu might not even have a spot for you." Jiangxiu was even more enraged when he heard these words. His swordplay grew even more ferocious, but it was clear that he wouldn't be able to maintain it for long. Luo Huan's long whip danced in an impenetrable manner. That alluring figure danced about, causing many to drool with desire. In their hearts, they were fantasizing about becoming Luo Huan's man. However, they also knew that even though Luo Huan seemed to be unrestrained, in reality, no man had ever succeeded in wooing her. At this moment, the cry of a crane drifted over from afar. Gazing over, a look of bewilderment could be seen on the faces of the spectators. Who would dare to ride on a demonic beast in the Emperor Star Academy? However, as the cry of the crane drew closer, all of their eyes were fixated on the beautiful figure on top of the crane. Emo Qingcheng. Those men were in a daze, as though they had forgotten about the intense battle between Luo Huan and Jiangxiu. On the white crane in the distance, a beautiful figure dressed in white sat there like a fairy. Her face was perfect, and her expression was peaceful, just like a fairy. Compared to Emo Qingcheng, Nolan, who was beside her, seemed to have been forgotten. Actually, it wasn't that Nolan wasn't beautiful, it was just that when she was together with Emo Qingcheng, her beauty was completely suppressed. There were many beauties in the Chu country, but all of them would pale in comparison to Emo Qingcheng. How beautiful! Qin Yao couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. In her heart, she was thinking of Luo Huan's words. If Wentian could marry Emo Qingcheng, wouldn't that be a beautiful marriage as well? The white crane soared through the air, and very quickly, it arrived at the location of the spectators. Emo Qingcheng also seems to be paying attention to the battle here. Someone involuntarily adjusted his robes when he saw Emo Qingcheng's beautiful eyes looking over. Qiu Emo also turned his gaze towards the beautiful maiden in the air. A gentle smile appeared on his face, exuding a sense of friendliness. Why is she here? An expression of bewilderment appeared on Qin Wentian's face. Every time he saw Emo Qingcheng, his heart would palpitate slightly. For people of his age, they were all hot-blooded youths. Facing a beauty like Emo Qingcheng who could cause the downfall of empires, it was extremely difficult for them to remain calm. After all, the cultivation of their hearts had yet to reach the state where their hearts were as calm as still water. The white crane swooped down, landing on the public square. The two maidens atop the crane slowly descended, attracting the attention of the crowd. It was as though the spectacular battle between Luo Huan and Jiangxiu had been forgotten by the crowd. Qingcheng, why are you here in the academy? Qiu Emo walked up, smiling at Emo Qingcheng. Oi Qiu Emo, when did Qingcheng become so familiar with you? Be more respectful when you address me. Nolan glared at Qiu Emo, causing an expression of embarrassment to appear on Qiu Mo's face. However, an instant later, a gentle smile appeared on his face. Emo Qingcheng didn't bother with Qiu Mo, and only casually glanced at him. However, Qiu Mo was already used to it. Not only him, Emo Qingcheng didn't even give a smile to a few of the 10 prodigies. However, when he saw Emo Qingcheng walking towards Qin Wentian, Qiu Mo's countenance changed, as an undetectable cold light flickered in his eyes. He had long heard that Emo Qingcheng had already viewed Qin Wentian in a different light during the banquet. Could it be that the number 1 beauty of Chu, who had never shown any respect to the 10 prodigies, had a very good relationship with Qin Wentian? As he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel indignant in his heart. This Qin Wentian must have had some dogshit luck. Not only did he obtain so many powerful divine inscriptions, he even caused Emo Qingcheng to view him in a different light. Dumbo. Emo Qingcheng called out to Qin Wentian, with a light smile on her face. Looking at the expression on Qin Wentian's face, she felt that this fellow was a little Dumbo. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered. Dumbo. He couldn't help but recall the scene in the snow that day, as a bitter smile appeared on his face. Was he really a Dumbo? At this moment, Qin Wentian felt several cold gazes directed at him. Even Xiao Mo was the same. This caused a strange feeling to appear in Qin Wentian's heart. Could it be that Xiao Mo's hostility towards him originated from Mo Qingqing? Chapter 111. Mo Qingqing's status in the Emperor Star Academy was different from the others. She had never passed the entrance examination like the others, but she would often appear in the academy in the past. Not only that, she also had an Emperor Star Jade Medallion, allowing her to enjoy the same resources as the other students. Not only that, it was rumored that some of the highly respected elders of the academy all recognized her. It was only in the recent 2 years that the number of times Mo Qingqing appeared in the Emperor Star Academy gradually decreased. Maybe it was because her strength was slowly growing stronger, but as to what cultivation level she had reached, only a few people knew. But there were some who guessed that if she revealed her true strength and participated in the Junlin banquet, she would definitely be able to become one of the 10 prodigies. Not only that, Mo Qingqing was definitely the dream lover of many youths in Chu. It wasn't a secret that a few of the 10 prodigies had pursued her, but Mo Qingqing had never bothered with them. At this moment, Mo Qingqing ignored Xiao Mo and called Qin Wentian a Dumbo. Such a scene caused many to be petrified. Calling him a Dumbo was somewhat intimate, as though the two of them were very familiar with each other. Even Nolan was somewhat jealous of Qin Wentian. This fellow's luck was truly good. Ever since the first time he fainted, Mo Qingqing had never treated a guy so well before. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it had something to do with the relationship between the Mo clan and the Qin clan. Miss Mo, why are you here? Qin Wentian smiled. Can't I be here? Mo Qingqing revealed an adorable smile, causing the gazes of countless people to be dumbfounded. Also, you can just call me Qingqing. Mo Qingqing smiled gently as she continued. At this moment, the gazes of the crowd were filled with undisguised jealousy. If only Mo Qingqing could speak to them in such a manner. How wonderful would that be? The gentle smile on Qiumo's face vanished as his countenance turned extremely unsightly. Earlier, when he called her Qingqing, he was directly ignored. Not only that, Nolan even told him to be more respectful. But earlier, Mo Qingqing had personally told Qin Wentian to just call her Qingqing. Such a disparity caused Xiao Mo to feel as though he had suffered a huge blow. There were so many people watching. Qin Wentian. Xiao Mo naturally didn't dare to have any ill intentions towards Mo Qingqing, but his hatred for Qin Wentian grew even more intense. What capabilities did this person have? Not only was he favored by the Emperor Star Academy, he was even protected by the will of the Emperor Star Academy. Not only that, Mo Qingqing even gave him special treatment. Qingqing. Qin Wentian shouted with a smile. Seeing the bright smile on the face of the girl in front of him, his heart couldn't help palpitating a little. It seemed that there was a little nervousness and excitement in it. Taking a deep breath, Qin Wentian calmed himself down and secretly scolded himself for not being tough enough to lose his composure in front of a beautiful woman. At this moment, he was not the only one who had lost his composure. He did not know how many people wanted to take his place. Brat, you threw your senior sister aside when you saw your little lover. A voice came from the side, causing Qin Wentian's eyes to flicker, and he was stunned. Turning his gaze over, Qin Wentian saw that Luo Huan and Jiang Xiu had stopped their battle. Luo Huan giggled as she stared at Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing. The ambiguity in her eyes was extremely obvious, and her words caused Qin Wentian to feel incomparably awkward. Mo Qingqing's smiling face also had a hint of redness on it. Her beauty could topple empires, causing the spectators below to fall into a daze. The goddess of their dreams actually had such a bashful expression on her face. But what made them despair was that Mo Qingqing only revealed such a bashful expression after hearing Luo Huan's words. In fact, she didn't even say anything to refute. It's over, Mo Qingqing. Don't tell me that she really has feelings for Qin Wentian? The spectators were completely dumbfounded, as they grew increasingly jealous of Qin Wentian. Senior sister, is it really okay for you to act like this? Qin Wentian speechlessly asked. Wasn't Luo Huan's words a little too much? Stealthily glancing at Mo Qingqing, Upon seeing her bashful expression, Qin Wentian's heart pounded. What's not good about it? The number one beauty of Chu. I think she's a good match for you. Why don't you hurry up and woo her? Or have you already made a move? Luo Huan blinked her beautiful eyes, causing Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing to feel even more awkward. Pooey. Is this fellow even worthy of my Qingqing? Nolan, who was at the side, was dumbfounded. She walked over to Mo Qingqing's side and unhappily stated, the number of outstanding youths who fancied Mo Qingqing could fill the entire Emperor Star Academy. How could they let this fellow off so easily? How is he not worthy? He's already able to create a third-level divine inscription at the age of 17, creating the history of Chu. In addition to the fact that my junior brother is so young and handsome, he would definitely surpass the 10 prodigies in the future. I think he and Mo Qingqing are a match made in heaven. Luo Huan seemed to be intentionally playing matchmaker, as she giggled. Impossible. Nolan fumed. The two beauties were arguing, causing Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing to be completely dumbfounded. Wasn't this the same as wanting the world to be in chaos? You guys, what are you talking about? Mo Qingqing felt somewhat depressed. After which, she shifted her gaze onto Qin Wentian. Grandfather said that the Astral River Hall will be open to the Emperor Star Academy today. Let's go to the Astral River Hall and ignore them. The Astral River Hall will be open to the public. The gazes of the crowd froze. The Emperor Star Academy had 3 great cultivation grounds. First, the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Second, the Astral River Hall. Third, the Dream Sky Forest. Both the Heavenly Star Pavilion and the Astral River Hall required one to have a certain level of Emperor Star Jade Medallion to enter. This was especially so for the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Inside, there were cultivation arts, innate techniques, high-grade divine imprints, and weaponsmithing techniques. It was the same for the Astral River Hall as well. The level of one's Emperor Star Jade Medallion would determine which level one could enter. Naturally, it also depended on whether one had the ability or not. However, the Astral River Hall was different from the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Every year, the Astral River Hall would be open to the entire Emperor Star Academy. This was an opportunity for those from the Emperor Star Academy. As long as they had the ability to ascend to the higher levels of the Astral River Hall, the Emperor Star Academy would allow them to do so. Many people speculated that the reason why the Emperor Star Academy did this was because of the Junlin banquet at the end of the year. After all, many students from the Emperor Star Academy would participate in the Junlin banquet every year. As the strongest academy in the Chu country, if the performance of the students from the Emperor Star Academy was too poor, it wouldn't be good for the Emperor Star Academy. Today, was the Astral River Hall going to be open to everyone? To those who lacked Yuan meteor stones but possessed a strong will and astral perception, this was a rare opportunity. Astral River Hall? Qin Wentian had naturally heard of the Astral River Hall before. Because he could already sense the constellations in the 5th heavenly layer, he hadn't gone to the Astral River Hall for the past year. Taking this opportunity, he might as well go and take a look. Right. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he walked to the back of Mo Qingqing's white crane. Instantly, the white crane spread its wings and soared into the skies. The two of you. Nolan was dumbfounded as she witnessed this scene. Stomping her feet, she flew in the direction of the Astral River Hall as she angrily stated, "Smelly lass, choosing a lover over a friend. Let's see how I'll teach you a lesson." Luo Huan had a light smile on her face, feeling extremely happy. "Boss, why didn't you bring me along?" Fan Lu stretched his hands out in the air, feeling incomparably depressed. They were all brothers. Didn't they say that they would share blessings together? However, this smelly brat was truly powerful. Qin Wentian had already told Fan Lu about how Mo Qingqing had helped him during the banquet, and had even intentionally apologized to him. Naturally, Fan Lu wouldn't care about that misunderstanding. Qiumo's countenance turned ashen as he stared dumbfoundedly at the two silhouettes in the skies. Mo Qingqing actually invited Qin Wentian to ride the white crane together with her? What kind of treatment was this? There had never been a man who had received such treatment before. I know that the reason why you're targeting junior brother Qin is because of Mo Qingqing. But what's laughable is that Mo Qingqing doesn't even know who Qiu Mo is. On the contrary, you've already seen her relationship with junior brother Qin. Hence, I really don't know what's so good about you breaking through to Yuanfu in front of junior brother Qin. Even if you broke through to Yuanfu, that lass from the Mo clan still couldn't be bothered to even glance at you. At this moment, Luo Huan didn't forget to strike a blow at Qiu Mo. Not long ago, Qiu Mo had been extremely arrogant. Now that there was an opportunity for revenge, how could Luo Huan be polite to him? And you, the so-called 10 prodigies of the royal capital, after the Junlin banquet, there will no longer be a place for you. Luo Huan cast a glance at Jiang Xiao. Earlier, in the battle between the two of them, neither of them had the upper hand. See you at the Astral River Hall. Jiang Xiao coldly snorted, after which he slowly walked out, heading in the direction of the Astral River Hall. See you at the Astral River Hall. Qiu Mo also roared as he soared up the skies, flying in the direction of the Astral River Hall. Those on the platform all stood up and headed towards the Astral River Hall. Since the Astral River Hall was open to the Emperor Star Academy today, those with high talent would be able to walk higher. Wasn't this also a form of competition? The outstanding students of the Emperor Star Academy would all compete against each other to see who could walk higher? Very quickly, the silhouettes on the platform all departed, rushing towards the Astral River Hall. That fellow Qin Wentian had obtained the favor of Mo Qingqing. Most probably, Qiu Mo and the rest wouldn't give up on this opportunity to humiliate him. Maybe in the Astral River Hall, their competition would continue. Chapter 112. Outside the Astral River Hall, there were already many people gathered. Not only that, they were all students of the Emperor Star Academy with extraordinary talent. Evidently, they had already received the approval of their elders to come here first. At the same time, the news of the Astral River Hall's opening spread to every corner of the Emperor Star Academy. As long as one was in the Emperor Star Academy, everyone would soon know of the opening of the Astral River Hall. In the skies, a white crane descended, floating in the air. On top of the white crane, 2 silhouettes could be seen. The male was young and handsome, while the female was a beauty capable of toppling empires. Just a single glance at them would cause one to involuntarily praise them for being a perfect couple. However, the first emotion that appeared in the hearts of the spectators wasn't admiration, but rather jealousy. They naturally recognized the 2 silhouettes on the white crane, Qin Wentian, and the number 1 beauty of Mo Qingqing. It seemed like the relationship between Mo Qingqing and Qin Wentian was true. The two of them were even riding on the white crane of Mo Qingqing. This undoubtedly caused Qin Wentian to once again become the focal point of the crowd. Qin Wentian could feel the gazes of the crowd. He involuntarily glanced at Mo Qingqing beside him as he laughed. This time around, you've really caused me to be in deep trouble. Mo Qingqing gazed at Qin Wentian, as a cute smile appeared on her face. Propping up her chin with one of her hands, she giggled. Why? Are you not willing? How can that be? With a beauty accompanying me. It's truly a feast for the eyes. Qin Wentian laughed. So even a fool has a time when he isn't stupid. Mo Qingqing smiled, causing Qin Wentian to be slightly absent-minded as he sighed in his heart. Since ancient times, people loved beauty, and those absolute beauties would always attract the adoration and pursuit of countless people. Since this was the origin of the phrase femme fatale. At this moment, Qin Wentian could already feel the deep meaning behind this phrase. He had yet to win the heart of the beauty, but just because his relationship with Mo Qingqing was slightly better, he had already attracted the hatred of many. Have you entered the Astral River Hall before? Mo Qingqing gently asked as she gazed at the great hall ahead. Nope. I heard that the Astral River Hall imitates the pressure from the 9 astral rivers in the 9 heavenly layers in order to allow Wuxia to condense an even higher level constellation. Hence, he has yet to enter it. Qin Wentian replied. Dumbo, you are not humble at all. Mo Qingqing laughed. Qin Wentian was hinting that he didn't need to use the Astral River Hall for the time being. But I have a name, okay? Qin Wentian stared at Mo Qingqing. Since when was he called Dumbo? I'm calling you an idiot. Do you have any objections? Mo Qingqing pretended to glare at Qin Wentian, but there was no trace of anger on her beautiful face. She only gave off a sense of mischievousness, causing Qin Wentian's heart to throb inexplicably. Women were so beautiful that even the slightest movement of hers would cause the heartbeat of others to quicken. She was so beautiful that it was unbelievable. You win. Qin Wentian shrugged his shoulders, completely defeated. Mo Qingqing had a victorious expression on her face as she smiled. The astral river hall doesn't merely imitate the pressure from the 9 astral rivers in the 9 heavenly layers. There are still many profound mysteries hidden within. It's just that not many people are able to see through them. A strange light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. He had never heard of such a thing before. But since Mo Qingqing's maternal grandfather was his grandmaster, what she said should be correct. The astral river hall wasn't as simple as it seemed, and contained many profound mysteries within. More and more people gathered outside the astral river hall. Even the teachers of the various academies had personally arrived. They stood in front of the astral river hall, gazing at the students outside with faint smiles on their faces. This time around, the astral river hall was completely open to the public. It was unknown if there would be any outstanding talents who would be able to step into the higher levels of the astral river hall. Xiao Mo, Jiang Xiu, Luo Huan, Luo Cheng and the rest naturally arrived as well. They stood outside the astral river hall, their gazes fixed on the white crane hovering in the air. Xiao Mo's eyes gleamed with a cold light. The gentleness and elegance he exuded had long disappeared, replaced by a naked hatred and jealousy. This time around, he had wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to humiliate Qin Wentian. However, in front of the Emperor Star Monument, not only did he fail, he was even humiliated by a few juniors. What made him even more unable to accept was Mo Qingqing's disregard of him, as well as her passion towards Qin Wentian. Just these two contrasting views were sufficient to cause him to lose all face in front of the others. Jiang Xiu's mood naturally wasn't any better. However, the two silhouettes atop the white crane in the air didn't even bother to glance at the two of them. There was no need to say anything about Mo Qingqing. She didn't even know Qiu Mo and Jiang Xiu, and only knew of them. As for Qin Wentian, he also didn't place the two of them in his heart, even if they were part of the 10 prodigies. Smelly lass, you value your lover more than your friends. Nolan stood below, her hands on her hips as she roared at the white crane in the air. Mo Qingqing had a mischievous expression on her face as she stared at Nolan. Nolan, don't talk nonsense. I won't bring you back with me later. If you don't want to bring me back, then so be it. You dare to threaten me? Nolan fumed. This lass had actually abandoned her to bring Qin Wentian along. How infuriating. Stop shouting. Mo Qingqing will become junior apprentice Brother Qin's wife sooner or later. At that time, you will be an outsider. Luo Huan laughed as she walked up. Momentarily, Nolan's eyes spat out flames as she glared at Luo Huan. That smelly brat? No way. It's fine as long as he and Qin Wentian are in love. It's not like he's marrying you. How could Nolan win against Luo Huan? With just a few sentences, her face turned red, and she was speechless. Her actions caused the surrounding spectators to be stunned. The number one beauty of Mo Qingqing, and Qin Wentian were mutually in love. When did this happen? Senior sister of yours, isn't her mouth a little too much? On the white crane, Missouri Qingqing glanced at Qin Wentian with hidden bitterness. Although she treated Qin Wentian as a good friend, it wasn't to that extent. You should also understand senior sister Luo Huan's personality. She's always like this. Qin Wentian was speechless as well. Senior sister Luo Huan was attracting hatred for him. Now the gazes of the spectators below were getting colder and colder. However, Luo Huan didn't think so in her heart. She giggled as she looked at Qin Wentian, thinking in her heart, smelly brat, this elder sister is helping you to build up momentum. Next, you will have to depend on yourself to deal with this lass. At this moment, Janus was also standing in front of the Astral River Hall. He inclined his head and stared at the white crane in the air, as a cold light flickered in his eyes. What a dogshit lucky fellow. Janus's eyes flickered with killing intent. Naturally, he had reasons to hate Qin Wentian. Before Qin Wentian entered the Emperor Star Academy, He had already formed a grudge with Qin Wentian. However, under his suppression, Qin Wentian actually did better and better. Not only that, he even received the attention of the upper echelons of the Emperor Star Academy. This caused Janus to lose a lot of face in the elder circle of the Emperor Star Academy. He hadn't forgotten the time when Qin Wentian threatened him in front of everyone, saying that he would kill him in a few years' time. Teacher. At this moment, a silhouette walked to the side of Janus as he called out. Orkan, this is an opportunity for you. Work hard, and maybe next year, you will be able to step into Yuanfu. This can be used as a foundation for you to condense your third astral soul. Janus instructed. Your disciple understands. Orkan nodded his head, as the sharpness in his eyes was retracted. Compared to before, his demeanor was even colder. Yet the sharpness he exuded was still restrained. However, the feeling he gave off was even more dangerous. It was as though the moment he erupted, he would be extremely terrifying. Not bad, he's about to break through to Yuanfu. An elder who had a good relationship with Janus nodded as he smiled at Orkan. The surrounding crowd cast deep glances at Orkan. During this period of time, Orkan had disappeared from the Emperor Star Academy. Most probably he was preparing for the Junlin banquet, as well as breaking through to Yuanfu. Orkan turned and walked towards the direction of the crowd. His gaze was incomparably sharp, piercing straight towards Qin Wentian. Even Qin Wentian, who was standing in the air, could clearly feel the ice-cold killing intent radiating from him. Mo Qingqing's countenance changed as she whispered to Qin Wentian. Dumbo, Orkan is much more dangerous than before. You have to be careful of him. I know. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He naturally understood that Orkan hated him to the bone, but wasn't he the same as well? Mustang, today, I really want to see what level of the Astral River Hall your talented disciple can ascend. Janus coldly snorted at Mustang, who was standing not too far away from him. Don't forget, his second astral soul originated from the fourth heavenly layer. Orkan can't be compared to him. Mustang's countenance was calm. Just like how Janus was confident in Orkan, he was also extremely confident in Qin Wentian. Okay, you guys can now enter the Astral River Hall. The first batch of people to enter must have an Emperor Star Jade Medallion of the 4th grade or above. The gates of the Astral River Hall slowly opened as a silhouette walked out, addressing the crowd. Although the Astral River Hall was vast, it was impossible for it to accommodate too many people at once. Hence, they had to enter in batches. For the first batch of people, those with a higher grade medallion would be allowed to enter first. Let's enter. The white crane landed on the ground, and the surrounding people involuntarily opened up a path for them. Mo Qingqing and Qin Wentian walked down together, as Nolan ran up to them. Smelly lass. Mo Qingqing made a face at Nolan as she laughed, petty. Qin Wentian, I heard that your second astral soul originated from the 4th heavenly layer. I hope you won't disappoint us too much. Chiyomo's voice drifted over from the side as he walked towards the Astral River Hall. What a pity, I'm afraid you wouldn't dare to participate in this year's Junlin banquet. Jiang Xiu's silhouette also appeared, following Chiyo Mo into the Astral River Hall. How annoying! Qin Wentian stared at them as a cold smile appeared on his face. After which he smiled. Beautiful Qingqing, let's enter. Beauty Qingqing? Mo Qingqing and Nolan, who were at the side, were both stunned as they stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian blinked his eyes as he awkwardly laughed. Natural reaction, natural reaction. After which, Qin Wentian acted as though nothing had happened as he continued walking forward. Staring at his back, Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flickered as she smiled. Her eyebrows were like crescent moons, exceptionally beautiful. Chapter 113. Mo Qingqing followed behind Qin Wentian as they entered the Astral River Hall. At this moment, there were already quite a number of people present. They were all standing there, staring at the skies above their heads. The instant Qin Wentian stepped into the Astral River Hall, his heart trembled. The space above him didn't seem to be the Astral River Hall, but rather the starry sky. The Astral River Hall borrowed the name of the 9 heavenly layers, and was split into 9 levels. Each level represented a starry sky. Standing within the astral river hall was akin to standing beneath the starry sky. Over there were countless constellations. It feels so real. Qin Wentian exclaimed in admiration. A faint pressure, similar to the pressure from the first heavenly layer, permeated the air. However, the first batch of people to enter the astral river hall were all able to easily resist this pressure. The founder of the Emperor Star Academy is definitely a genius. Mo Qingqing smiled. Qin Wentian nodded his head in agreement. At this moment, a wave of coldness descended. Orkan's gaze shifted over to Qin Wentian. His body stood there, resembling a straight spear, cold and sharp, as though he wanted to pierce through Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian also stared at Orkan, as a cold light flickered in his eyes. Will you participate in the Junlin banquet at the end of this year? Orkan calmly asked. From his tone, one couldn't sense much anger, but one could still feel a dense coldness emanating from him. I think so. Qin Wentian stared at him as he faintly replied. If that's the case, you'd better pray that you don't meet me. Orkan took a step towards Qin Wentian, as a sharp aura frenziedly gushed towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian only felt a long spear piercing towards him. Orkan's strength was many times stronger compared to the first time they met. Boom. Taking another step forward, an astral spear materialized in Orkan's hands, incomparably sharp. Killing intent gushed forth as he lunged towards Qin Wentian. Orkan, what are you doing? Luo Huan coldly snorted, causing the gazes of the crowd to shift in their direction. Mo Qingqing's countenance also changed as an indistinct aura gushed forth from her. Don't worry, no matter how stupid I am, I won't make a move in the Emperor Star Academy. Orkan swept a glance at Luo Huan, as the long spear in his hands pierced towards the starry skies. In an instant, he broke through the restraints of the starry skies, and his body transformed into a beam of light, disappearing from the first level of the astral river hall. Disappeared. Qin Wentian's gaze froze. This was the first time he stepped into the astral river hall, so he wasn't too familiar with it. Feeling the intense killing intent radiating from Orkan, Qin Wentian's countenance grew heavy. Orkan and the rest of the Emperor Star Academy's killing intent towards him was extremely heavy. If it wasn't for the Emperor Star Academy standing behind him, he wouldn't be able to cultivate in peace. Junlin Banquet. Qin Wentian felt an immense pressure bearing down on him. With his cultivation base at the 6th level of arterial circulation, it was still insufficient for him to participate in the Junlin Banquet. You actually want to participate in the Junlin Banquet as well? Jiang Xiu's voice abruptly drifted over, causing Qin Wentian to raise his head to look at him. Jiang Xiu initially thought that Qin Wentian wouldn't participate in the Junlin Banquet this year, but Qin Wentian actually told Orkan that he would. Very well. Jiang Xiu smiled. After which, he inclined his head and stared at the skies. His sword pierced through the astral river hall, as his silhouette similarly disappeared from the first level. Qiu Mo also cast a glance at Qin Wentian before he too disappeared from the first level of the astral river hall. Many people cast their gazes in the direction of Qin Wentian. It wasn't because they had a grudge against Qin Wentian like Orkan, but rather, it was because of the commotion caused by Qin Wentian. Currently, even Mo Qingqing was looking at him in a different light. Not only within the astral river hall, the spectators outside the astral river hall were the same as well. The ones they paid the most attention to were Qin Wentian, Mo Qingqing, Qiu Mo, Jiang Xiu, Orkan, Luo Huan and Luo Cheng. How many levels would these people be able to ascend to? Outside the astral river hall, the spectators stared at the great hall ahead of them. At this moment, the first and second levels were illuminated by the starry skies. Even from the outside, they could clearly see the scene within. Orkan's speed is so fast. He's the first to ascend to the second level. Seems like the actions of Qin Wentian have also spurred him on. His current strength shouldn't be any weaker than Jiang Xiu of the 10 prodigies. Jiang Xiu, Qiu Mo, Luo Cheng and the rest have all ascended to the second level. How fast? I wonder who will be the first to ascend to the third level. The gazes of the spectators outside were all fixated on the scene within the astral river hall. Every time someone stepped into the astral river hall, the astral river within would appear, illuminating the surroundings. Even from the outside, the spectators would be able to see it. Qin Wentian contemplated the astral river above his head. Numerous constellations interweaved together to form a magnificent picture, as though they were flowing. A faint pressure gushed downwards, yet to Qin Wentian, this kind of pressure was negligible. Do you feel the suppressive attack of the astral river? Luo Huan asked Qin Wentian. I feel it. Qin Wentian lightly nodded his head. The flowing constellations converged into a formless attack that landed on his body. At the same time, it stimulated his will and spirit. Break through it, and you will be able to ascend. Luo Huan smiled. After which she inclined her head as her gaze abruptly turned sharp, as though there was a sharp glint in her eyes. In an instant, a resplendent light enveloped her body, and in the next instant, Luo Huan disappeared from the sight of Qin Wentian. Evidently, to Luo Huan, this wasn't a difficult task at all. Junior brother Qin, I will wait for you up there. Mountain walked over as he spoke. After which, he punched out with his fist as he too departed from the astral river hall. Very swiftly, the people on the first level departed one after another. Not too long after, only 3 people remained. Qin Wentian, Mo Qingqing, and Fan Le. None of them spoke. They quietly inclined their heads and stared at the astral river. Boss, what did you see? Fan Li's eyes shone with a brilliant light as he stared at the astral river above. Inscriptions. Qin Wentian replied in a low voice. He saw that the astral river was flowing, converging into lines of inscriptions. That pressure originated from there. Seems like you are really a genius in the field of divine inscriptions, right? What I saw was an innate technique. A fist imbued with an innate technique blasting towards us. Fan Le spoke in a low voice, his words causing Qin Wentian to furrow his brows. What he saw was actually different from what Fan Le saw. What I saw was also an innate technique. Mo Qingqing nodded her head as she continued. The astral river hall is filled with mysteries, but the vast majority of people are unable to see it. Even I can't see through it. Dumbo, I will leave first. You better comprehend it yourself. After speaking, Mo Qingqing's silhouette vanished from sight, heading towards the second level of the astral river hall. I'm leaving too. Fan Le smiled. With a single thought, a beam of light shot out, piercing through the void as his silhouette vanished from sight. Only Qin Wentian remained on the first level. Such a scene caused many to be astonished. Those from the Emperor Star Academy who were outside the astral river hall all had strange expressions on their faces when they saw that Qin Wentian was the only one on the first level. Qin Wentian's astral souls are from the 3rd and 4th heavenly layers. The first level shouldn't be able to obstruct him, right? Maybe, he just wants to experience the mysteries of the astral river hall. Many people mused as they inclined their heads and stared at the second level. At this moment, exclamations of shock rang out. Orkan had stepped into the 3rd level of the astral river hall. Such a speed was simply too terrifying. After which, Qiao Mo, Jiang Xiao, and Luo Qing also ascended to the 3rd level. Astral light enveloped the entire area, causing the spectators to feel as though they were bathed in starlight. These people have all condensed an astral soul from the 3rd heavenly layer. I wonder if they would be able to step into the 4th level of the astral river hall. The moment they did so, it would mean that they would have the possibility of condensing an astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer. The spectators mused. Time slowly flowed by, and there were already over 10 people who had ascended to the 3rd level. The talent of these people were evidently stronger than the rest. However, there was one point that the spectators didn't understand. Qin Wentian was still on the 1st level. What was he doing? Nobody knew. At this moment, Qin Wentian was sitting cross-legged, quietly sensing the trajectories of the astral souls. The trajectories of the astral souls interweaved into a magnificent diagram. And after which, they actually converged into a fist, blasting towards him. Boom. Qin Wentian only felt his mind trembling violently as he groaned in pain. However, an expression of excitement could be seen on his face. Divine imprints, innate techniques. In this starry space, The two of them are perfectly linked together. This is an opportunity. Qin Wentian's heart thumped wildly. He was even more excited now that he saw the Fist of Innate Techniques. At the end, Qin Wentian simply closed his eyes and sank into contemplation. In the formless space, the Fist of Innate Techniques blasted towards him unceasingly. Every time it blasted out, it would cause Qin Wentian's consciousness to tremble. However, this caused him to be even more excited. He definitely had to see the trajectory of the innate techniques clearly. Just like that, he sat there for 3 days. Currently, the first batch of people had already exited the Astral River Hall, and a new batch of people entered. This new batch of people also left the first level of the Astral River Hall. However, Qin Wentian was still sitting there. Nobody knew what he was doing. Gradually, the crowd started to suspect how Qin Wentian condensed his astral soul. Could it really be like what Xiaomo had said? Did he really have a heaven-defying miraculous encounter? 5 days later, the students of the Emperor Star Academy entered and exited the Astral River Hall. There were countless of them attempting to break through their limits. Abruptly, a dazzling radiance radiated outwards. The space outside seemed to be enveloped by the Astral River. The students of the Emperor Star Academy inclined their heads and stared at the Astral River Hall, as their hearts involuntarily trembled. Xiaomo has already stepped into the 4th level of the Astral River Hall. Seems like after stepping into Yuanfu, he really has a chance to condense his 3rd astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer. The hearts of the spectators trembled. No wonder Xiaomo was ranked 4th amongst the 10 prodigies. Boom. At this moment, the hearts of the crowd trembled. Yet another silhouette appeared in the 4th level of the Astral River Hall. That person was actually Orkan. At this moment, the expressions on the faces of the crowd were extremely fascinating, as their hearts pounded wildly. It was as though they could see a dazzling genius slowly soaring up into the skies. Chapter 114. Orkan was different from Xiaomo. He was only at the 9th level of arterial circulation, and had yet to break through to Yuanfu. Hence, it was much more difficult for him to enter the 4th level of the Astral River Hall compared to Xiaomo. This meant that the probability of him condensing an astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer was extremely high, far higher than Xiaomo's. Knowing shame leads to a transformation. With Orkan's will, breaking through to Yuanfu is only a matter of time. Janus smiled as he nodded his head. His gaze inadvertently swept towards the 1st level of the Astral River Hall, only to see Qin Wentian still sitting there, not knowing what he was doing. This caused a cold smile to flash past Janus' eyes as he muttered in a low voice, deliberately mystifying things. Janus wasn't so foolish as to think that Qin Wentian wouldn't even be able to exit the 1st level of the Astral River Hall. At this moment, Qin Wentian was completely immersed in his own comprehension, and had even forgotten the flow of time. He wouldn't bother about which level of the Astral River Hall was which. At this moment, in his mind, there was only the circulation of the runic patterns, as well as the power of the innate technique. The Astral River flowed slowly, and the lines of runic patterns became clearer and clearer in Qin Wentian's eyes. Gradually, they converged into the shape of a fist, before abruptly blasting towards Qin Wentian. But now, such attacks were no longer able to cause Qin Wentian's will to waver. He could only quietly comprehend. Time continued to flow, and after 12 days, Mo Qingqing had also ascended to the 4th level of the Astral River Hall. However, they were no longer able to advance any further. The 4th level of the Astral River Hall gave them an immense pressure, and Xiaomo had already exited it. He had no way to continue enduring the formless pressure. Still at the 1st level? A strange expression appeared on Xiaomo's face when he saw Qin Wentian. What was this fellow doing? At this moment, Qin Wentian could already clearly see the flowing runic patterns. However, at the instant when he saw them clearly, a light of enlightenment appeared in his mind. It was as though he was suddenly enlightened, and everything became clear to him. Wrong. In the past, I've always been walking the wrong path. Since the divine inscriptions are completed, how can I look at the trajectories of the inscriptions? The divine inscriptions themselves are a complete entity, a type of concept. Although Qin Wentian's eyes were still closed, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. This feeling of being suddenly enlightened was wonderful. Qin Wentian did not open his eyes. Instead, he activated his cultivation technique and allowed himself to fall into a dreamland. In the dream, Qin Wentian stood in an empty courtyard. He held the starlight heavenly hammer in his hand, and patterns interweaved in his body. Abruptly, astral energy flowed as the heavenly hammer in Qin Wentian's hand smashed downwards. In an instant, a divine inscription diagram appeared on the ground. This diagram was none other than the divine inscription scroll he had created. Possessors of a foundry astral soul are innate weaponsmiths, able to directly construct a complete set of runic patterns. Qin Wentian silently mused. Maybe this was the true meaning of innate weaponsmiths. The ancient halberd appeared in his hands. Qin Wentian stood there as his aura surged madly. Abruptly, his silhouette transformed into a blur, as illusory wings of a Garuda appeared behind him. The ancient halberd slashed out in rage, as a hurricane manifested at the tip of the halberd, coalescing into a terrifying vortex. Boom! A muffled sound rang out in the air as the ground violently exploded. This halberd strike wasn't a variation of the berserk beast halberd art, but something he had created himself. It was similar to the aura of the divine inscription scroll, except that it was still somewhat lacking. It didn't have that dreamlike aura, and didn't have the ability to condense the might of the heavens into a single strike. Qin Wentian found the right feeling, and started to perfect this halberd strike. This attack was a fusion of his speed, divine energy, astral soul and aura. It would become his strongest attack. This halberd technique was created in my dreams, and I shall name it the Great Dream Halberd Art. Not only that, this will be the first stance of the Great Dream Halberd Art. I shall name it Mountain Splitter. Qin Wentian mused. Evidently, he had the confidence to create a complete set of halberd techniques. In the future he would still be able to create more divine inscriptions, and create more innate techniques. The first stance was majestic, capable of cleaving apart mountains. It was also the work of Mountain Splitter. Qin Wentian continued to perfect the Mountain Splitter, and even had a grand dream, imagining himself to be an expert capable of splitting apart the heavens and earth. He would be like a Garuda, traversing the universe unhindered, and as his halberd technique blasted out, the heavens and earth would be split apart. In the blink of an eye, half a month had already passed. The majority of the first batch of participants had already exited, and upon seeing Qin Wentian still on the first level, they couldn't help but feel puzzled. However, it was precisely on this day that Qin Wentian finally opened his eyes. Standing up, he broke through the restrictions of the first level, and stepped into the second level of the Astral River Hall. This fellow is finally willing to step into the second level. Outside, Luo Huan was still waiting there, as she spoke in a depressed tone. During these few days, she had heard all sorts of voices. Some were puzzled, some were doubtful. However, the crowd soon discovered that Qin Wentian wasn't like the other geniuses, breaking through the restrictions of the second level in such a short period of time. Instead, he sat down cross-legged once again. Many people gradually left this place. Cultivation time was precious, and nobody had the time to waste on waiting for Qin Wentian. 4 days later, Qin Wentian stepped into the third level of the Astral River Hall. However, the voices of doubt from the Emperor Star Academy grew louder and louder. Could it be that Qin Wentian's reputation was undeserved? For every level of the Astral River Hall, he had to spend a long period of time before he could break through the pressure and ascend to a higher level? If not, why did he have to do so in every level? The Junlin banquet is about to begin. You better make the most of your time and come out quickly. Mo Qingqing smiled as she stared at the silhouette sitting cross-legged on the third level. After which, she and Nolan mounted the white crane and departed from the Emperor Star Academy. Outside the Astral River Hall, the atmosphere gradually quietened down. The crowd had all left, but the atmosphere within the Emperor Star Academy was even more lively than before, because the end of the year had already arrived, and the Junlin banquet was about to begin. How could the young geniuses who were out tempering themselves in the outside world miss out on this grand banquet? Within the Knights Association, Orkhan stood there, exuding a faint coldness. Inclining his head, he stared in the direction of the Astral River Hall as he asked, "Which level has he stepped into?" "Not long ago, he stepped into the 4th level." A person beside him replied. The him they were referring to was naturally Qin Wentian. "Is he still at the 4th level? Seems like this is your limit," Orkhan calmly replied. Orkhan wasn't the only one who felt this way. Many people also felt that Qin Wentian's limit was the 4th level. It seemed like he had encountered a miraculous encounter when he condensed an astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer. Other than a few people, as time flowed by, many people gradually forgot that Qin Wentian was still in the Astral River Hall. What the majority of the people were paying attention to was which of the returning geniuses of the Emperor Star Academy would be able to obtain a high ranking in the Junlin banquet. Orkhan had stepped into the 4th level of the Astral River Hall. The current him seemed to have undergone a transformation, and he might even have the chance to obtain one of the top 9 rankings, becoming one of the 10 prodigies. There were also Jiang Xiu, Luo Cheng, Luo Huan, and the others. Naturally, there was one more person that had to be mentioned, and that was Luo Qianqiu. This person's talent was exceedingly high, and it was rumored that this time around he only had a single goal: to obtain the top position in the Junlin banquet. There were so many geniuses in the Junlin banquet, and it was extremely difficult to obtain the top position. Especially this time around, it was said that even the geniuses of Snowcloud Country would be participating. In any case, this year's Junlin banquet was simply too exciting. Not only the Emperor Star Academy, but the entire royal capital of Chu was also boiling with excitement. The Royal Academy, Divine Wind Academy, 7 Stars Martial Palace, as well as the other academies, were all waiting with bated breath for the commencement of the Junlin banquet. Within the Royal Academy, Mu Rou stood beneath a tree, and couldn't help but feel a wave of emotions in her heart as she recalled her experiences in the past few days. Currently, the support given to her by her clan was much greater than before, and the attitude of everyone had started to change. At the same time, some of the people in the academy were no longer as cold as before. On the contrary, they were exceptionally passionate towards her. She had seen all of this with her own eyes, and after experiencing this incident, she had a deeper understanding of the meaning behind the words "the fickleness of human nature." The Junlin banquet is about to arrive. This time around, who would be the one to dazzle the royal capital? Will Qin Wentian participate? Mu Rou murmured. Every year, the Junlin banquet was the grandest event in the royal capital of Chu. This year was no exception. However, even if Qin Wentian participated this year, he wouldn't be able to achieve much. However, she believed that in the Junlin banquet next year, he would definitely unleash the most dazzling brilliance. Today, in the skies above Chu, a flock of demonic beasts could be seen. These demonic beasts were even pulling a dragon carriage, and a majestic group of experts mounted on these demonic beasts as they soared through the skies, shocking the entire Chu country. Very quickly, the news of the Crown Prince of Snowcloud arriving in the royal capital along with the geniuses of the Snowcloud country. Today, within the Dark Forest, disciples of the godly General Martial Palace, who were separated from the rest of the world, exited the Dark Forest under the lead of Luo Wuxia, and entered the royal capital of Chu. Today, Heaven's Wonder, one of the 3 largest gambling houses in the Chu country, as well as the largest gambling house in the Chu country, had already announced the payout rates for the top 9 rankers of the Junlin banquet. Not only that, when the Junlin banquet officially started, Heaven's Wonder would also announce the betting odds for the top 9 rankers of the Junlin banquet. As for the betting odds, they would naturally use Yuan stones or Yuan meteor stones as their bets. Based on the betting odds set by Heaven's Wonder, the odds for Luo Qianqiu to obtain the top position of the Junlin banquet were the lowest. This meant that for this year's Junlin banquet, Luo Qianqiu was the one that Heaven's Wonder favored the most. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.